有太心灵深处，拥抱着一个渴望，我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳下。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷。犹太心灵深处，拥抱着一个渴望，我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳下。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷， sana. 我们不爱失去2000年的希望，再次去国土，传给自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷，再次去国土，传给自由民族，住在西安和耶路撒冷。
שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם. שיר למעלות, אשא עיניי אל ההרים, מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם השם, עושה שמיים וארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל. השם שומרך, השם צילך, על יד ימינך. יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך. השם ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Give me 1 second here to get rid of this goes, and that goes on. Oh, it's the way we usually do it. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to this week's World Alliance of Qara'im Torah study. We have a very interesting study for you ahead. Shabbat Shalom Tsuri, Shabbat Shalom Paul. Let me just ask for a quick sound check to make sure that you guys can hear me and see me okay. So if you can hear me and see me, please type in a 1 or a Y for yes into the chat, just so I know that I'm broadcasting correctly over the airwaves. Good, good, good. Very good. Have confirmation. So it's been an interesting week here. So I really just try to stick to my own little corner, say what I have to say to people, and promote among the people who are interested the ideas that I have, the ideas of Karaitism. But this week, the official rabbinical authorities here in the city that I live in, the Golan Heights, issued an official proclamation. I'm going to read the proclamation to you. This is actually the message that was sent out to the local community here, to one of the synagogues, the one that I usually attend. And so it's quoting the main message, or it's paraphrasing the main message, but it says, "Dear friends, over the past months, many members of our community have approached me regarding Melech, who publicly identifies with the Karaite movement and actively promotes its teachings through through conversations, gatherings, videos like this one, and written materials. As Jews faithful to the Torah." Are they really faithful to the Torah? No, they are not faithful to the Torah. Let me read it, and then I'll go back and make some points. Let me just read what they wrote first. As Jews faithful to the Torah and the tradition of our ancestors, we affirm that the Torah has been transmitted through both the written Torah and the oral tradition, meaning the rabbinical interpretations. The Masorah means the chain of transmission, preserved by the Jewish people throughout the generations, is the foundation upon which Jewish life and observance stand. Rejection of that Masorah, chain of tradition, represents a departure from the path followed by our fathers and mothers throughout the generations of Israel. After discussion and deliberation, the Vad HaRabbanim of the city I live in, Vad HaRabbanim means the Council of Rabbis, together with the chief rabbi of the city, determined that one who publicly advocates teaching that reject the Masorah, the chain of transmission of Israel, is not to be counted for dominion, called to the Torah, or granted any other synagogue honors. As member of the Vad HaRabbanim and as a rabbi of this particular shul, I will follow this ruling in our congregation. And it goes on, so on and so forth. I won't go through the whole thing. If anyone is interested, I'll be happy to send you a copy of it. So what does this mean, first of all? It means when you're in a synagogue, if you've ever been in a rabbinical synagogue, which I think some have and some haven't here, but if you have, then you know that when they do the Torah readings, they have something called an aliyah. They have 7, actually 8, but they call 7 people up essentially to the Torah when they're reading the portion of the week, they call it, when they're reading the Torah portion of the week. And it's kind of an honor to be called up. So they said, so the Council of Rabbis of the city issued an order or directive that myself, because I do not accept the quote unquote oral law of the rabbis, is not to be called up to the Torah for this honor. And also that I'm not to be counted towards a minyan. What does that mean? There's this concept in the rabbinical. No, they did not meet with me before issuing the proclamation. I probably would not have met with them anyway, but they did not. At any rate, completing or counted for a minyan means this idea that you're supposed to have 10 people, called a quorum of 10 people, in a gathering in order to be able to do basically the prayer service, to be able to do the communal prayer service. So if there are 9 people there, and I'm the 10th, I don't count as the 10th. They ignore me. Well, let me say something. So first of all, regarding the first thing, not being called up to the Torah, they've actually done me a huge favor, because anyone who knows me knows that I hate being called up to the Torah in rabbinical synagogues. I can't stand it. I actually cower in the corner, usually when they're looking for the next person, usually when they're doing these 7 aliyot, calling these 7 people one after the other up to the Torah. When they're looking for the next one, I'm cowering in the corner, hoping they don't see me. I'll hide behind a book if I need to, because I just like to sit in my quiet corner and do my thing, whether it's reading Tanakh or listening to the Torah reading or whatever the case may be. but B, because I consider it an embarrassment to be called up to the Torah in a rabbinical synagogue. To me, it's like being called up to the Torah in a church, or it's like being called up to the Torah in a Hindu temple. So they've actually done me a great honor and a great favor by doing this. And I'm not just saying this for sour grapes. I really mean this. This is anyone who knows me knows that when they're looking around for someone to call up, I'm always cowering in the corner. Please don't choose me. Please don't choose me. And I dread in the past when they have chosen me. As for being counted towards a minyan, well, I don't really care. I consider that an honor as well. Not to be counted as a member of a group of idol worshippers. And do I mean outright idol worships? Well, yeah, in some cases, yeah, yes. There are elements of rabbinical Judaism that are outright idol worship, such as parts of the Zohar, such as their tendency to go to graves of the dead, especially graves of what they call the tzaddikim, the righteous rabbis of the past, and to pray at these graves. They say they're not praying to those dead rabbis. They say they're just asking God on behalf, or they're asking these rabbis to contact God on their behalf, to be the intermediary. But let's face it, they're basically praying. They're basically requesting things of the dead. It says, Lo tidrashu ala metim, the Torah says, and that's essentially what they're doing. And there are many, many other elements of idol worship. I'll give a couple in a second. So the first point to say is, thank you. I really mean it. You've saved me a lot of embarrassment and dishonor by exempting me from participating in these communal elements of this place of idol worship. And let me give you another couple of examples. Of how idol worship is carried out in rabbinical synagogues. So one of the examples that I have used for years is, so when they're doing the Torah reading, when they first take the Torah out of the ark, they'll march it around the synagogue, and everyone will bow down to it and often kiss it. They'll take their tzitzit, their talis, I forgot how to say it in English, their garment, and they'll touch it to the Torah, and then they'll kiss the Torah, and they'll literally bow down before the Torah. So this is a violation of the Ten Commandments. If we go to Exodus chapter 20, let's bring it up very quickly so we can get the exact words. I won't do it from the Hebrew now. We'll get into the Hebrew afterwards. But let's just bring it up. Exodus chapter 20. Let me read the exact words. So this is the Ten Commandments. So verse 4 says, you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, Yahweh, your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the parents, and so on and so forth. Okay? So you're probably saying, Melech, you're being a little petty. They don't really think of this as an idol, right? They don't really think it represents God. They don't really think it represents Yahweh. Well, not so fast. They kind of do, because what the rabbis have done in their history is they've replaced the prophets, who were actual messengers of Yahweh, with the scribes, with what they call the sages. That means themselves, with the rabbinical authorities. And they've replaced direct revelation from Yahweh with their false interpretations of the Torah, right? That's what they call falsely the oral law. As I've said many times before, their calling it the oral law is propaganda. It is a phrase, it's a term that they use to sell snake oil. They're snake oil salesmen, to sell their snake oil to the nation of Israel. What is their snake oil? Their snake oil is the lie that their interpretations go all the way back to the time of Moses, whereas any I mean, anyone who has half a brain could look at the history, can look at the archaeology, can look at the proofs and the evidence, and we'll see that this form of Judaism, this rabbinical Judaism, really goes back to approximately the 2nd century BCE, around the rise of Hellenism in Israel, with the takeover of the Seleucid Greeks of the land of Israel from the Ptolemaic Greeks, right around the time of the Hanukkah story, historically speaking. At any rate, I don't want to go off track. So this is the lie that they sell, okay? And they do this by essentially rejecting the words of the prophets of Yahweh, the true prophets of Yahweh, and replacing it with their interpretations of the written Torah, which they falsely call the oral Torah. So really, the written Torah to them is a replacement of Yahweh. It's a replacement of God. There's the famous story in the Talmud of Tanot Achnai, of the oven of Achnai, where even when this person receives direct revelation from God in the story, Batkol receives direct revelation from God, the rabbis say that it must be rejected in favor of their interpretations. So they've actually in that story reject direct revelation from Yahweh and replace it with their false interpretations, their distorted interpretations of the written law. So essentially what they've done is they have replaced Yahweh with the Torah scroll, in a sense. And then they've taken the Torah scroll, the written Torah, which is valid, of course, right? And they've produced a false set of interpretations, a distorted set of interpretations. So I don't think it's coincidence that when they lead this Torah scroll around their synagogues, that they are, in a sense, saying, or they're, in a sense, promoting a message that that the Torah scroll is the replacement of Yahweh, that their interpretation of the written word, which again they call the oral law, which they call their quote-unquote oral law, is their replacement for the direct revelation of Yahweh that Moshe received, that the prophets received, and that we were supposed to stick to throughout our history. So therefore, it is, in my eyes, a form of idol worship. And when they march the Torah scroll, and anyone who's been in a rabbinical synagogue knows exactly what I'm talking about, when they march the Torah scroll around the synagogue and they bow down before it and they kiss it, they are, in my opinion, worshiping, excuse me, they're engaging in idol worship. So I never partake in that. Anyone who's ever been with me in a rabbinical synagogue will pay attention or will notice that I do not bow down to the Torah. I don't kiss the Torah. I don't do anything like that. I just watch the idol worshipers that I'm with bow down and kiss the Torah. Okay, so what do we have to say about all of this? You know, we could sit here and we can engage in polemics against the rabbis, as I've done many times. So let's look at it a little bit, okay? The statement says, as Jews faithful to the Torah and the tradition of our ancestors. Really, is this the tradition of our ancestors? Yes, it is the tradition of our ancestors, of the Jewish ancestors, back again for approximately 2,000 years, 2,200 years, not 3,000 or 3,250 years ago, to the best of most people's, well, there are different dating systems, but the Torah was given, the 10 Commandments, the wandering in the desert occurred approximately 3,250 years ago, in approximately 1,250 BCE. But as I've mentioned in other talks that I've given, whenever you speak to rabbinical Jews, you'll always hear the number 2,000. Our tradition is 2,000 years old. Our tradition is 2,000 years old. The fact of the matter is that the first major publication of the rabbis, known as the Mishnah, according to the standard dating, it was published in around 200 CE, is actually 150 years younger than the New Testament. I always must preface this by saying, or I must add because who knows who's listening. Probably some people from the community are listening. When I bring this this polemic against the rabbis, I am in no way promoting Christianity or the New Testament or Messianic Judaism or anything like that. Those of you who know me for years, for decades, know that I have no interest in that and no affiliation with that whatsoever. But for people who don't know me so well, I need to make that 100% clear. I'm just using this as a polemic and saying if the rabbis really want to speak about an older religion than their Mishnah, which is the first work of rabbinical Judaism, they might as well become Christians and go to the New Testament, because the New Testament is actually older. At least the synoptic gospels of the New Testament are actually books that are 150 years older than their oldest extant major publication, their oldest extant book. There is one other publication called the Megillat Ta'anit, but it's basically irrelevant for our discussion. So their tradition goes back 2,000 years, I always say, but not 3,000 years. So are they following the traditions of their ancestors? Yes, they are. They're following tradition of 2,000 years of sinning ancestors. We're going to see today, we're going to be learning it in Leviticus chapter 26. And we'll see, in fact, let me pull up the verse right now, if I can. I'm going to go to Leviticus chapter 26. Let me find it here. Let me try to find the exact verse. If I can't find it quickly, then we'll just save it for later when we do our Torah study. Let's see if you mean just give me 1 second. Punish you. Joy. 1 second here. That's the way. Here. Okay. So this is Leviticus chapter 26. I'll start in verse 36. We're going to learn this hopefully later today in the Hebrew, but I'm just going to read it in the English as part of my opening monologue. As for those of you, remember in Leviticus chapter 26, we're talking about the blessing and the curse. So this is the part of the curse. As for those of you who are left, I will make their hearts so fearful. This is talking about after Yahweh has punished the people of Israel again and again and again and exiled them to the lands of their enemies. So Europe, the United States of America, the various Muslim countries. I will make their hearts so fearful in the lands of their enemies that the sound of a windblown leaf will put them to flight. They will run as though fleeing from the sword. And I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we'll go into this detail later. Okay. Those of you who are left will waste away in the lands of their enemies because of their sins. Also because of their ancestors' sins, they will waste away. So let's talk about this tradition of the ancestors. This is Leviticus chapter 26, verse 39. It says, those of you who are left will waste away in the lands of their enemies because of their sins and because of their ancestors' sins. Does it say here in Leviticus chapter 26, 39 that our ancestors kept the traditions of Moses? No. It says that they sinned. And this is exactly when this statement here says, Jews that are faithful to the Torah and the tradition of our ancestors, these are the sinning ancestors that have sinned for the past 2,000 years, following this false form, this false derivative religion of Torah, these distorted interpretations of Torah that have done nothing but for the past 2,000 years, but cause exile from the land of Israel, cause pogroms, holocausts, inquisitions, rapes, murders, October 7th, and so on and so forth. All of these horrible things, if you look at the history of the Jewish people for the past 2,000 years, it has been destruction of the Second Temple. We can go back even further than that. Destruction of the Second Temple, defeat of Bar Kokhba and his rebels in 135 CE, and the complete exiling of all Jews from Jerusalem at that time, followed by exile, followed by, again, inquisitions, expulsions, rapes, murders, pogroms, holocausts, and so on and so forth. This is the punishment. This is the fruit that the people of Israel, that the Jewish people have reaped over the past 2,000 years because they've been following, and again, I quote this rabbi here, the tradition of our ancestors. This is the tradition of our ancestors. This is exactly what is being spoken about here in Leviticus chapter 26, 39. I'll read it again. Those of you who are left will waste away in the lands of their enemies because of their sins, and also because of their ancestors' sins, they will waste away. I'll continue on to verse 40. But if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors. So when this rabbi is speaking about being faithful to the tradition of his ancestors. Is that what Leviticus 26:40 is telling the Jewish people to do? To be faithful to our ancestors? No, it's saying that if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and their hostility towards me, which made me hostile towards them, so I sent them into the land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for their sin, I will remember with my covenant with Jacob, my covenant with Isaac, my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. And so we will eventually be brought back to the land. I'm sitting today in the land of Israel. Many other people, 8 million are we up to? 7 million, 8 million, I can't remember the count of Jews that are living at this point in the land of Israel. But still, oh, what happened here? Okay, I'm a bit confused. Oh, there we go. But sorry, I lost the message. But still, we've brought back with us those same sins of our ancestors that we've been carrying through the galut, that we've been carrying through the exile for 2,000 years. This is why we have constant wars since 1948 and before. This is why we have October 7th. This is why we have constant problems with our neighbors, with the surrounding nations here in the land of Israel. Because although many of us are back here in the land of Israel, we have not admitted the sins. I'm going to read it again. Leviticus chapter 26, verse 40, but if they will confess their sins and the sins of their ancestors, their unfaithfulness and their hostility towards me, which made me hostile towards them, so that I sent them into the land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for the sin, I will remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. The fact of the matter is, if you go back a couple of 100 years, 300 years ago, approximately, then almost every Jew in the world was what would be considered a rabbinical or an Orthodox Jew. Close to 100%. That number has declined steadily over the past couple of 100 years, to the point right now that worldwide and in Israel, the number is at approximately 10%, meaning 10% of all Jews worldwide and in Israel would be considered Orthodox Jews who are actually following the ways of the rabbis. So we've gone from close to 100% down to around 10%. Is this a bad thing or is this a good thing? This is a great thing. This is a wonderful thing, because it means that the Jews, especially those who've come back to the land of Israel, want nothing to do with this sin, this distorted, derivative religion that grew out of the true understanding of Torah, this distorted religion known as Rabbinical Judaism. The nation of Israel has slowly, but surely, but steadily rejected it for the past 300 years or so, to the point where practically nobody, except for a couple of holdouts, 10% approximately of the nation, takes it seriously at this time, at this day and this time. Now, if you go into rabbi land, if you go into the land of Orthodox Jews, they have a very, very myopic vision of what's going on. They think that they are the righteous ones, the 10%, okay? And they think that the 90% of the rest of Israel is either just unlearned and just indoctrinated into foreign philosophies, what they would call tinokot shenishba'u. I won't get into it just means a kidnapped baby. It's a concept from the medieval rabbinical rabbi known as the Rambam. It's like a baby who is kidnapped and brainwashed from a very early age, right? So they look at the rest of the 90% of all Jews in the world as either brainwashed away from rabbinical Judaism, which they consider true Judaism, or outright hostile, outright hostile. And some of them will even say that such people deserve what they get, and such people even deserve, when the rabbis can get the power, to be killed. So that's their myopic point of view. That's their myopic view on all these things, that they are the 10% are the righteous ones, and 90% of the nation of Israel are just lost or deliberately going against Torah. That is an incredibly myopic and narrow point view, and it's an incorrect point of view. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And I've been saying for decades now that the Dati'im are really the Chilonim, and the Chilonim are really the Dati'im. What do I mean by this? Dati means the religious, meaning the Orthodox Jews. The religious are really the secular, and the secular are really the religious. And what do I mean by this? This 10% that think of themselves as so religious and so loyal to the Torah, they are actually the ones who are disloyal to the Torah. They are actually the ones that are being spoken about here in verse 39. Those of you who are left will waste away in the lands of their enemies because of their sins, and also because of their ancestors' sins they will waste away. Whereas the rest of the 90% of the nation of Israel, again, especially those who have come back to the land of Israel, they've rejected rabbinical Judaism. Did they find true Torah yet? Did they find what we can call Karaism, if you want to call it that? Did they, or Choserim b'Tanach, as I like to call our movement? Did they return to the true Tanakh? No. But at least they made the first step, and they rejected rabbinical Judaism. They identified it in their hearts and in their souls that there's as something that is distorted, as something that doesn't represent the true way of the nation of Israel, as something that doesn't represent the true Torah and the true direction of the Torah. And yes, they went out and they went to other philosophies such as Buddhism or liberal Western democracy, most of them liberal Western democracy, or Hinduism, or whatever the case may be, or just completely uninterested. But they've taken the first step by rejecting the sins of their ancestors. So they are actually, the 90% are actually the righteous ones. Not every single one, yesh v'yesh, there's all kinds of people. But the vast majority of the 90% are actually the righteous ones. They're the ones who've said, rabbis, we want nothing to do with you. We want nothing to do with your form of Judaism. We want nothing to do with your distorted interpretations of Torah that have made us suffer, that have destroyed us for 2,000 years. And we would rather be a Hindu or a Buddhist, or we would rather be a secular, liberal Westerner than have another day with this sick and distorted form of Judaism that has plagued our nation for the past 2,000 years. Hopefully, they will find their way back to Torah, and that's where we come in as Karaites, as people who are interested in the Torah, as people who are interested in the Tanakh. That's where we come in to get the word out there, to bring the people of Israel back to the true Torah, not the Torah of 2,000 years ago that the rabbis always hold up as a great accomplishment, not the Torah of the Greek ruling or the Greek sovereignty over the land of Israel, or the Roman sovereignty over the land of Israel, or any of the other various nations that have ruled over the land of Israel. Sorry, someone's trying to call me. Let me just turn this off. 1 second, please. I'm just going to turn off my phone completely. Done. Not this form of Judaism, because if you go back, or the rabbis again used to love to use the word our tradition, our 2,000-year-old traditions. If you go back 2,000 years ago, where do you end up? You end up square during the Roman occupation of Israel. Israel was a Roman province at that time. So we don't want to go back 2,000 years. We want to go back 3,000 years. We want to go back 2,700 years ago, 800 years ago, to the time of David, to the time of Solomon, further back to the time of the wonderful judges such as Solomon, such as Deborah, such as Deborah, such as Samson, such as even that we learned about in the rabbinical synagogues. They read about Yiftach, even though he was an interesting character. He waged war and succeeded in defeating the Ammonites. So we want to go back to the time before the nation of Israel, the people of Israel, knew anything about this sick and distorted form of Torah interpretation known as rabbinical Judaism. We want to go back to the true Torah. We want to go back to the straightforward, not the literal, but the straightforward and direct understanding of the words of the Torah. And we want to elect leaders and judges that will take the written words of the Torah and not take everything literally and not make the mistake of saying that everything that must be adjudicated is written directly in the Torah, but using the understanding and the wisdom of the laws of the written Torah to have wise and understanding and God-fearing judges over the people of Israel. This is not just what I want. I believe it's, at this point, what the people of Israel want, the 90% who want nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with the rabbis and rabbinical Judaism and their sick and distorted form of Judaism. So it is my hope and is my prayer that with the help of Yahweh, Elohei Israel, Yahweh, the God of Israel, that the horrible tragedies that we've had to face the past 2,000 years, that the horrible tragedies that we've had to face in recent years, October 7th, and all of the death and destruction that has come since then, the many soldiers that have died for no reason, essentially, in Gaza, in Lebanon, etc., the Jews that have been also living in war conditions here in Israel, and their time is quickly coming up in America to either be thrown out or perhaps worse of that country, the last big concentration, large concentration of Jews in the entire world outside of the land of Israel. There are still 6 million Jews in America. The country, aside from Israel, with the largest concentration or the largest number of Jews after that is France, with approximately 400,000 Jews. So the time for the Jews of America is just about up. And what we want and what we pray is that as many of those as possible of those Jews will come back to the land of Israel, and that the nation of Israel will reject all false philosophies, including and especially rabbinical Judaism with their quote-unquote oral law, their snake oil that they sell as snake oil salesmen for the past 2,000 years to the nation of Israel, which has done nothing but destroy us, and that we will return to the true Torah, a society based on simple and straightforward understandings and interpretations of the laws of the Torah, and not some Greek/Roman/Persian/Babylonian influenced religion that is a derivative religion of true Torah. So those are my thoughts for the day. And with that, we will take a little bit of a break, and then we will dig into the book of Zechariah, the book of Zechariah, and we are learning in chapter 14 of the book of Zechariah. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we shall pick it up from there. Once again, this is Hakham Melech Rahmiel Ben Yaakov, and this is the World Alliance of Qara'im Shabbat Torah study. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes.
השם ישמורך מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, השם ישמור צאתך ופועלך, ואתה בעד עולם. אוי 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 שיר למעלות, אשא עיני אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא השם עושה שמיים וארץ, הניתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך. אוי 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 שיר למעלות, אשא עיני אל ההרים, אוי מאין יבוא עזרי.
Rahmiel, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, vino en el cielo y en la estrellería, viendo lo santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avino. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
La mujer de tierra de nada, día en día ella preguntaba, ¿qué tiene la cara tan demonada? Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía.
Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Al fin de los 9 meses Pari quería, iba caminando por campos en viñas, y a su marido no le descubría, topó una mara y parería. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Okay, we are back. Let me do a sound check once again. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Please let me know if you can hear me okay. Just type a 1. Just the fan here. A 1 or a Y into the comments so I know that I'm being broadcast, that I'm broadcasting correctly. Somebody. Testing once, testing twice, testing 3 times. I'm going to assume that everybody can hear me. I hope so. Okay. So first of all, I issue an open challenge to the rabbi of the synagogue, or hi, no, בסדר, מה זה? בסדר, פקה. בסדר גמור. So first of all, I issue an open challenge to the rabbi of the synagogue, or to the chief rabbi of the city that I live in, or to any. They could bring a panel of rabbis. They can bring the greatest, their best scholars, their best quote unquote sages. Sages means wise men, so I won't say sages. I'll call them their best scholars, their best representatives, and an open invitation to debate them anytime, any place on the topic of rabbinical Judaism versus Torah, oral Torah versus quote unquote oral law versus quote unquote oral law versus written law, however they want to frame it, an open invitation to debate them one by one or in a panel. They can bring their top leaders, their top scholars from anywhere in the land of Israel. They can fly them in from other places they want. They can fly them in from New York. I don't care. An open invitation. I will debate them anytime and any place. Number 2, people ask me, well, if this synagogue is so messed up, why do you even go to this rabbinical synagogue? Well, the reason I go to this rabbinical synagogue is, first of all, because there is not at this point a Karaite community here in the Golan Heights. And the number 2 reason is that I had been told by actually another Karaite family. And by the way, there are a number of other families I know of in this synagogue, and I will not out them, that are either outright Karaites or Karaite leaning. So I was invited by another family that was a member of the synagogue that are outright Karaites, although they're kind of quiet about it, to join the synagogue when I came to live here. They had told me that this was a place that was very open and very accepting. I anticipated that it would be a place where there could be an open and honest exchange of ideas, and there is to a certain degree, and but it definitely has its limitations. So that's how I ended up at this particular synagogue. And the fact of the matter is, I may decide that I don't want to go there anymore. I may decide that I don't want to be part of this community anymore. At this point, I'm still part of the community, and I do have some good friends there, and there's some very nice and wonderful and special people, and even some of the people that I disagree with, including the rabbi himself, is a very nice person. None of this is meant to be a personal attack on any of these people. A lot of them themselves are just following, what they were brought up with. They are just going along, going along to get along, or whatever the phrase is. And it's nothing personal against any of these people. But it is kind of unfortunate that some of them see me as an enemy, when in my eyes, I'm honestly there to help. I'm really honestly there because I want to help my fellow Israelites. I want to help my fellow Jews. I want to help wean them away from this 2,000-year-old cult that has done nothing but plague our nation. But you know what? It's like a drug addict. And I actually have on the website on Karaite Insights for many years, I have these little quotes at the top. And I think one of them is something along the lines of, it is harder to wean a heroin addict off of heroin than it is to wean a rabbinical Jew off of rabbinical Judaism, or a Jew off of rabbinical Judaism. And it's true. When you come, not that I've had a lot of dealings, thank God, with people who are addicted to drugs in my entire life, but from what I know, or I can use the analogy that if you try to come to someone who's addicted to a hard drug and you try to get them off the drug, they may see you as trying to hurt them, as trying to damage them, as trying to attack them, when in fact you're really trying to help them. You're trying to rescue them from their addiction. Well, that's kind of the way it is here in my eyes. Those who see me, and again, it's very mixed. There are some who've been very supportive of me, others who've been kind of indifferent, and others who see me as an outright enemy. And it's sad because my intentions are really to help them and to help my fellow Israelites. But of course, a drug addict who's addicted to his hard drugs will see any attempt to alter that lifestyle as an attack on everything that they know and everything that they're used to. So that's just a kind of a follow-up to what I was saying before. At any rate, we're going to now get into the book of Zechariah. Let me share the screen. We hopefully are going to finish Zechariah today. And then we're working our way back among the minor prophets. The minor prophets don't mean that they're not important. The minor prophets are just the designation given to the prophets whose books are just take up less text, just shorter books. So we've done Malachi. If you remember Malachi, we finished Malachi, and now we're almost done with Zechariah, and the next one, working our way backwards in the traditional order, is going to be Haggai. So hopefully we'll start that next week, but let's see if we can finish off Zechariah. We were in verse, I wrote it down, let me see if I can check. Again, we were in we're going to be starting in verse 10. The chapter has 20 verses, so we're about halfway through, so we should be able to finish it today. We're also starting a little bit earlier today, which gives us a bit more time to go through it. Okay, so let me share the screen. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And we'll do what we usually do just for review. We're going to go into, we're going to just read from the beginning of chapter 14 in the English. And then when we get to verse 10, we'll switch back over to the Hebrew. So a day of Yahweh is coming. Jerusalem, when your possessions will be plundered and divided up within your very walls. We said that this definitely seems to be an end of days prophecy, because the things described in the next verses have not yet happened, ever. I will gather all the nations to Jerusalem. Sounds kind of like what's shaping up right now, right? I was watching, I believe it was Piers Morgan, who had a guest on who said that it is time for the other nations to invade the rogue state of Israel and put a stop to the quote-unquote genocide in Gaza, the genocide or the destruction of Lebanon, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it seems to be shaping up that all of the nations are going to be gathering against Israel. And by the way, when they say Jerusalem, Jerusalem is in this, it's speaking literally about Jerusalem, but Jerusalem also acts as a proxy for all of Israel, right? Just like I think this is technically called a synecdoche. I always call it synecdoche because I like calling it that better. That's a technical term, and it means when a part stands in for a whole, or a whole stands in for a part. So, for instance, the classic example they always give is that Washington and Moscow are discussing a peace treaty or whatever, right? It doesn't mean that the city of Moscow or the city of Washington is discussing a peace treaty with the city of Moscow. It means that the representatives of the United States are discussing a peace treaty with the representatives of Russia, and Washington, D.C. and Moscow are stand-ins or literary stand-ins for those leaders, right? So I will gather all the nations to Jerusalem to fight against it. The city will be captured, the houses ransacked, and the women raped. Half of the city will go into exile, but the rest of the people will be taken from the city. Then Yahweh will go out and fight against those nations as he fights on a day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, where I've been many times, and I highly recommend if you come to Israel that you visit the Mount of Olives. It's the best view of the old city of Jerusalem anywhere, bar none. And the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will extend to Azel. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then Yahweh, my God, will come, and all the holy ones with him. On that day, there will be neither sunlight nor cold, frosty darkness. It will be a unique day, a day known only to Yahweh, with no distinction between day and night. When evening comes, there will be light. And we saw this is reiterated in other places, such as in the book of Amos, that the great and terrible day of the Lord is going to be a day of neither light nor darkness. On that day, I think there actually says it won't be a day of light, it will be a day of darkness, but there will not be light during the day. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it east to the Dead Sea, half of it west to the Mediterranean Sea in summer and in winter. Yahweh will be king over the whole earth. On that day, there will be one Yahweh, and his name the only name, or Yahweh will be one, and his name the only name. In other words, Yahweh will be recognized as the one and only God by all of the nations. And here we are in verse 10. So let's switch over now to the Hebrew. We've got our commentary ready to rock and roll. So let's bring that up as well. And let's see how I want to do this. Right. So I think what I've been doing usually now is, just give me 1 second. So I do this in Lincoln split view. Go. This is Zechariah, chapter 14. Oops, the English here. And we want verse 10. Let me just check in and make sure you guys can see the screen okay. And I think you can. Okay, so what do we have here? Zechariah chapter 14, verse 10. Isov kol haaretz ka'arava migeva lerimon negev Yerushalayim. Let's translate up into there. We have our etnach. That's kind of our semicolon. Isov kol haaretz, all the land will turn back to being Arava, like the desert. By the way, that's where you get the word Arab from. Aravi means if Arava is desert, then Aravi is a desert nomad. And that's what Aravi means. That's what Arab means in Hebrew. Aravi, it means a desert wanderer, desert nomad. Migeva le Rimon, Negev Yerushalayim, from Geva to Rimon, 2 places. I'm not going to go look them up right now. South of Jerusalem. Okay. Ra'ama yashva tachteha le'mish'ar binyamin ad mekom sha'ar harishon ad sha'ar hapinim ומגדל חננאל עד יקבי המלך. Okay. So, רעמה וישבה תחת למשער בנימין. So, I'm not sure I like this translation here. I want to go look at what Robert Alter does with this one, verse 10. So he translates this as all the land shall become as a plain. And again, if we go back here, this is kind of a tough one to translate. Ra'ama. So we have an extra olive in here. I'm just going to check something for my own edification. Yeah, this is what we call a hapax legomenon, meaning it only appears once in the entire Tanakh. This word ra'ama. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. But the Tanakh only appears once in the entire Tanakh. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here as being to rise up or being lifted up. So it's being translated here And we can even see the verb ra'am appears once in Zechariah 14:10. The verse envisions a future day when Jerusalem will be raised up and remain in its place, etc. So we can go with that translation. Although whenever you have these words that occur only once in the Tanakh, there are various possibilities. And indeed, I believe Robert Alter translates it differently. So he translates it not as rising up, but as the land shall become as a plain. Let's see his reasoning for translating it that way. Again, we're in Zechariah chapter 14, verse 10. And he doesn't give an explanation. Okay, so we'll go with Robert Alter is usually a better translation. And he translates it as the land shall become as a plain. So I guess it means similar thing. It will rise up, but as a plateau. Yeshvat tachtecha. So literally, it will rise up and it will remain in its place. Yeshvat tachtecha. Misha'ar Binyamin ad makom sha'ar rishon, from the gate of Benjamin until the place of the first gate. Ach Pinim, until the corner gate. U Migdal Hananel ad Ikve Hamelech. So these are different places around the outskirts or around the borders of Jerusalem, of the old city of Jerusalem. Again, I don't know which of these places have been figured out, have been excavated, or have been identified, but I don't want to dwell on it right now. I want to move ahead. But these are various places around the edges of the old city of Jerusalem, or specifically the city of David. Okay, so Uyeshvu b'herem lo yeh. It's up a little bit. Uyeshvu b'herem lo yeh od yeshva Yerushalayim levetach. And it's Yashvuba, literally there will be those that inhabit it. It will be inhabited. Herem lo yeh od, it will no longer be destroyed, given over to destruction. V'yashva Yerushalayim levetach, and Jerusalem will dwell in safety. Okay, again, this is now verse 11. Let's see if there's any interpretation there. Robert Alter translates it as a pretty straightforward translation. And they shall dwell within her, and no more shall there be devastation. Jerusalem shall dwell secure. Verse 12. Let's go up to here. Uzoth tihiyeh hama gefa asher yigof Yahweh et kol ha'amim asher tzavu al Yerushalayim. And this will be the plague which Yahweh will bring, literally will plague, the plague that Yahweh will plague against all of the nations that gather militarily upon Jerusalem. Okay, here the NIV translates it as that fought against Jerusalem. Okay, this is a famous verse, by the way. So this is what's going to happen to all those nations. So remember, up above we have prophecy of all the nations coming against Jerusalem. We have the Mount of Olives splitting from east to west, and a river running out, or a stream running out of the from the middle of the Mount of Olives, half to the east, half to the west. Excuse me. And here we have more details about that. So this is what's going to happen to all of the nations that come against Jerusalem. Okay. Hamik bisaro vehu amed al rigalau waqainao timakna behorehem urishano timak befihem. This is a very graphic kind of description. Hamik bisaro. So this is what's going to happen to the soldiers that come against Jerusalem, that come against Israel. At this end of days prophecy, their flesh will melt away while they're still standing on their feet. And their eyes shall melt away within their sockets. And their tongue shall melt away within their mouths. Okay, again, let's get a Robert Alter on that one. Okay, this shall be the plague which with Yahweh shall strike all the peoples that marshaled against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall rot as they stand on their feet. Their eyes shall rot in their sockets, and their tongue shall rot in their mouths. So pretty graphic description of what's going to happen to the armies, the soldiers that come against them from all of the nations that come against Jerusalem, that come against Yerushalayim. Now, I used to hear many years ago that this is a prediction of nuclear war, right? But that doesn't make any sense to me, because if a nuclear bomb goes off and melts away the flesh and the eyes and the tongues of the enemy, so then it's also going to do the same to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But, I just wanted to point that out because I've heard that interpretation before, but it doesn't seem to make sense. Okay, verse 13. Go down to here. So on the day, the terror of Yahweh will be great upon them. Okay, here they translate it as, on that day the people will be stricken by the Lord with great panic. And each person shall hold the hand of his neighbor, of his fellow man, the person close to him. And one person's hand shall grasp, or shall go up upon, literally, the hand of his neighbor. See, they're translating this as they will seize each other by the hand and attack one another. All right, let's see what Robert Alter has to say about that one. This is verse 13. Every man shall seize his fellow, and his hand shall be raised against the hand of his fellow. Okay, so in other words, I guess what the interpretation here, let me look again in the Hebrew. Fine, fair enough. So it means that these enemy soldiers, when they're struck with this panic and their flesh is melting away and their eyes are melting away and their tongues are rotting away, that they're going to start attacking each other. Right? Kind of reminds us of what happened in the time of Hezekiah when the Assyrians under Sanherib attacked Jerusalem, and it speaks about how a plague struck the armies of the Assyrians, and if I remember correctly, it says explicitly that they killed each other off, and they were all gone by the morning. Okay, verse 14. So also Judah, troops of Judah, will fight in Jerusalem. And all of the armies of the surrounding nations will be gathered. Zahav v'kesef v'radim larov me'od. Great amounts of gold and silver and garments. Very great amounts of gold and silver and garments will be gathered. So in other words, what this is speaking about here is that the troops of Judea are going to go out against the IDF, right? Is going to go out against these enemies that are attacking, that have now been struck down by the plague that Yahweh brings upon them. They're rotting away, they're killing each other, and now that's when they're all in this mihumah, when they're all in this panic, in this terror, the Jewish soldiers, in this case, literally it says the Judah, so we can say the Jews, or the Judean soldiers will go out and essentially finish them off and take as spoils of war lots of gold and silver and garments. Okay, let's get a little bit of interpretation on this if we have any. So Robert Alter translates this: and Judah too shall do battle in Jerusalem, and the wealth of the nations round about shall be gathered in, gold and silver and very many garments. And there's commentary here. So verse 10. And this shall be the plague. So the prophet is not content. So this is the plague we spoke about. The prophet is not content with the evocation of Jerusalem dwelling secure, but goes on to describe the ghastly fate of its enemies, their flesh. Let me make this a little bit bigger, by the way. Easier to see. There we go. Their flesh, the Hebrew uses a masculine singular, though the plague is throughout the plague passage, but this is basically flag now. Okay. That's just a grammatical note, which we don't have to go into right here. Okay, so Judah too shall do battle in Jerusalem. Hebrew usage usage also allows one to construe this as do battle against Jerusalem, and a few scholars have proposed a background of bitter enmity between the population of Jerusalem and the inhabitants of the outlying district. Right. This seems unlikely. Agreed. 100%. Okay, so there we go. I just want to see one thing here. So this is in 12. Let me just see something here for myself. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Right. Verse 15. לכן תהיה מגפה הסוס, הפרד, הגמל והחמור וכל הבהמה אשר יהיה במחנות ההמה כמגפה הזאת. And so basically what this is saying, to summarize, is the same thing is going to happen to the war animals. So it shall be the plague upon the horses and the mules and the camels and the donkeys and all of the animals that are going to be in those war camps, in those camps. It will be like this plague, meaning the plague that was described earlier. So in other words, just as the flesh of the soldiers is going to rot away, their eyes are going to rot away in their sockets, their tongues are going to rot away in their mouths, so that's going to happen also with the war animals. Poor animals, what did they do to deserve that? But that's the way it goes. Okay, verse 16. So, let's see if there's any commentary on that. That's verse 15. Like the plague, that is the plague in which the living body rots. Verse 16. This is a very famous verse. ועלו מדי שנה בשנה להשתחוות למלך יהוה צבאות ולחוג את חג הסוכות. So it shall be that all of those that remain, that are still alive, the remnant of all of the nations that had come against Jerusalem, ועלו מדי שנה בשנה, that each year they shall go up להשתחוות למלך יהוה, to bow down, to prostrate themselves before the King Yahweh, the King Yahweh of hosts. I don't hate that translation of hosts. King Yahweh, surrounded by his entourage, his heavenly entourage, to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. It's a very famous verse here. There's Zechariah chapter 14:16. Let's go on to the next verse, and then we can go back and analyze it. Verse 17. وحيا أشر לא יעלה מאת משפחות הארץ אל ירושלים להשתחוות למלך יהוה צבאות ולא עליהם יהיה הגשם. And it shall be that وحيا أشر לא יעלה מאת משפחות הארץ, and it shall be that those from among the families of the earth, meaning the various ethnicities, the various races, the various nations of the earth that do not come up to Jerusalem to prostrate themselves, to bow down before the King Yahweh of hosts, then there will be no rain upon them. Okay, verse 18. ואם משפחת מצרים לא תעלה ולא באה ולא עליהם תהיה המגפה ולא באה ולא עליהם. Just one second here. תהיה המגפה אשר יגוף יהוה את הכהנים אשר לא יעלה כל. Okay. So if the family of Egypt, the Egyptians, do not come up when, or come up where? To Jerusalem on the festival of Sukkot, the festival of booths. So it shall not come upon them, meaning the rain. That's what it's referring to. Okay. So where were we? So the plague which Yahweh had brought upon the nations, or the plague. Let me just read this one more time. et hagoyim asher lo yalu lechog et Sukkot. So there will be. So this is the plague that will be brought upon by Yahweh upon all of the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of tabernacles. Okay, let's get a little commentary on this one here. So, this is saying something really amazing when we think about it, but let's just first read a little bit of commentary here. Okay, so verse 16: all who remain of the nations shall go up year after year to bow to the King, Lord of armies. This passage picks up the idea claimed in 3rd Isaiah that all of the nations will embrace the worship of Yahweh. It is for this reason that God is given here is given the epithet King, for he's King of all the earth. The festival of booths. This is the fall festival, which, because it was celebrated after the labor of harvesting was completed. So we've spoken about Sukkot. We've spoken about this festival of ingathering, the fall harvest festival, many times before. Drew the largest throngs of pilgrims. Evidently, the allegation of the sundry nations is just this festival and not all 3 pilgrim festivals. And who does not go up to bow to the king, unlike the parallel passages in 3rd Isaiah. This call to universalism is accompanied by a threat to those who do not comply. The withholding of rain is not a threat to Egypt because it has the Nile as its water source, so the Egyptians will be punished by plague. So that's how he interprets this. Let me just read it again in Hebrew. Right, so that makes sense. Right, that's why Egypt is singled out. Right, so we see here in verse 17 that all of the nations, if the nations do not come up and bow down before Yahweh, King Yahweh of hosts on Sukkot, then they will not have any rain upon them. And with Egypt, because, as Robert Alter points out, they don't rely on rain, they rely on the yearly flooding of the Nile River as it floods from the rains that come down from southern Egypt, from what's called Upper Egypt, in the annual flooding season of the Nile to this day. Then they will be struck with the plague because they're not reliant on water. It says this is mentioned a number of times, even in the Torah itself. Okay, verse 19. זאת תהיה חטאת מצרים וחטאת כל הגויים אשר לא יעלו לחג את חג הסוכות. This will be, literally means a sin, but the implication here is this will be their punishment for the sins of Egypt and the sin of all of the nations that do not come up to celebrate the festival of booths, of tabernacles, Sukkot. Okay. Okay. Any commentary there? The punishment for the offense, right? Punishment is merely implied in the Hebrew. That's what we just mentioned. Verse 20. So bayom hahu yi'er al mitziloth hasus kodesh leYahweh. Haya hasirot bebeit Yahweh כמזרקים לפני המזבח. Okay, so it shall be in that day that upon the bells of the horses will be written, holy to Yahweh, Kodesh le Yahweh. Very similar to what is written on the high priest. If we remember way back in the book of Exodus, when it describes the priestly clothing, and on the tzitz, it's called the diadem. The priest is written Kadosh li Yahweh, holy to Yahweh. So this is also going to be written in the end of days. This is also going to be written even on the horses. I think is the implication here. V'hayas sirot veit Yahweh, and so it shall be that the pots, cooking pots, they translate here in the NIV, in the house of Yahweh. So this is the holy temple. It's really called in the Tanakh usually Beit Yahweh, the house of Yahweh. Kimizrakim lifnei ha-mizbeach. It's going to be like, well, here they translate as sacred bowls. I'm not sure I like that translation. See how Robert Alter deals with that one. This is verse 20. So on that day, there shall be on the bells of the horses holy to Yahweh, and the pails in the house of Yahweh shall be like the basins before the altar. Okay, what does that mean? So, holy to Yahweh, this is the formulaic phrase that indicates consecration to the temple. The horses will no longer serve as mounts for battle, but we will be part of the sacred service. The pails in the house of Yahweh shall be like the basins before the altar. The intention of the statement is obscure. Agreed. Since the next verse goes on to say that all the pails in the kingdom will be inscribed with the words dedicated, perhaps the meaning may be even receptacles commonly used for mundane purposes will be devoted to the service of God. היה כל סיר בירושלים וביהודה קודש ליהוה צבאות, ובאו כל הזובחים ולקחו מהם ובישלו בהם. So it shall be that every pail, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah will be marked with holy to Yahweh of hosts, Uba kol hazovchim, and all of those who have come to slaughter animals, and sacrifice animals, that they will take them and seethe and boil the animals or stew the animals in them. So again, I think this is a prophecy of how many people are going to come up to Jerusalem, that there is going to be a need for so many pots. There are going to be so many sacrifices that there's going to be a need for all of these pots to cook the meat of the sacrifices in them. Okay. There shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Yahweh of hosts on that day. So they translate this as here Canaanite. This is usually understood as merchant. Let's see what Robert Alter does with that one. Okay, there should no longer be a merchant. So the presence of merchants was required in order to exchange gold and silver for chattel that could be offered as sacrifice. Jesus, it will be remembered, objected to such commercial activity in the temple and drove out the money changers. It would appear that this prophet was actuated by that same impulse of purism or zealotry. Okay, so this word Kinaani literally means Canaanite. Okay. So, but if we look at the lexicon, the BTB, the Brown Driver Briggs, then let's see here. Yeah, there's going to be a lot. So merchant. So it is used a number of times in the context of trader or merchant, but it literally means a Canaanite, like someone who is of the nation of one of the nations of Canaan. Okay. All right. כן. מה אתה רוצה לעשות?
לכסח את הדשא.
עכשיו?
כן. כמה זמן אתה רוצה?
לא, אני אהיה פה להרבה זמן, אז כמה זמן אתה תעשה את זה?
10 דקות.
אין בעיה, אתה יודע מה? אני שם אוזניות, זה לא יפה בכלל.
אין בעיה.
אין שום בעיה, תעשה. אין בעיה. 100%. Hold on one second, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just going to put on headphones because there's going to be noise in the background. So just give me 1 second, please. Let's see, we're connected here. Okay, guys, I definitely need a sound check. Can you guys hear me? I have my headphones on now, so I definitely need a sound check. If you guys can hear me, please let me know. Yeah? Good. 1 second. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, we should be good. Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of the book of Zechariah, of the book of Zechariah. And next time, as I mentioned, we're going to be digging into the book of Haggai. Okay, so let's just read this over again a little bit in the English from where we started. We're in verse 10. Okay. Okay, we're starting verse 9. Just give me 1 second here. תודה לכם. תודה רבה. תודה. זהו, אתה יודע מה? אני אכנס בפנים לכמה דקות.
אנחנו עושים את זה בדקה.
בסדר, זה.
רק תכסף בזה.
אני בפנים, זה לא מפה. האמת שזה לא משנה, אבל טוב ככה, אז אתם לא צריכים למהר יותר מדי. אני אהיה בפנים. Okay, guys, I'm just moving position for a second. Alrighty. It's going to move temporarily so that the noise doesn't bother us. Noise going on outside. Excuse me 1 second here. Alrighty. Here we are. So, I forgot the, oh darn, I forgot the mouse. 1 second. Be right back. Okay. So here we are. Let me again just make sure we got a sound check going. Since I just moved positions. Here comes my cat. He's gonna drive me crazy. Joe. Hey, baby. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, I think we're okay for now. So, right. So that's the book of Zechariah. That's the book of Zechariah. Let's review. So verse 9, Yahweh will be king over the whole earth. On that day there will be one Yahweh, and his name the only name. So what this really means, in my opinion, is that it will be clear in this end of days prophecy that there's only one God in this world, and that God is Yahweh. All of the other gods will be revealed to have been fake, to have been figments of imagination. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to turn on the AC here. AC going. Okay. So it doesn't mean this is not a statement of monotheism. I think this is a mistake, as we spoke about this last time. So we look at the Hebrew in verse 9. Okay. Famous verse. Okay. היה יהוה למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהא יהוה אחד ושמו אחד. So it shall be, or Yahweh shall be king over all of the earth. On that day, Yahweh shall be one, and his name shall be one. So what does it mean? Let's start with his name shall be one. What does it mean his name shall be one? He didn't have 10, he did kind of, the rabbis have given him plenty of different names, such as Adonai, Elohim, Hashem, Elohim, and so on and so forth. But I don't think that's what it means. What it means by his name will be one is that everyone, the entire earth, will know his name. There are other prophecies there are other places where the same prophecy is given that the entire earth shall know his name, right? So if that's what this means, so Shemo Echad, his name shall be one. So Yahweh Echad, Yahweh will be one, meaning that the entire earth will know that Yahweh is God. The entire earth will know that Yahweh is God. Okay, so that's what it means. So it's not a statement of monotheism. It's a statement of an end of days prophecy, when after Yahweh has come and attacked all of the enemies that come against Israel, has destroyed all of the enemies that come against Israel. They came against Jerusalem. Yahweh has gone out of his hiding place, out of hiding his face, and he's attacked and destroyed all those who came and attacked Jerusalem. Then on that day, it's going to be so clear that Yahweh is the one and only God, and all the other gods, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Vishnu, whether it's I don't know who else we have there. No shortage of gods in the world, right? Are going to be revealed as figments of human imagination. Okay. Verse 10, the whole land from Geba to Rimon, south of Jerusalem, will become like the Arabah. So in other words, they'll dry out like the desert. The Arabah means the desert. But Jerusalem will be raised up high from the Benjamin gate to the side of the first gate, to the corner gate, and the tower of Hananel, the royal winepress, and will remain in its place. It will be inhabited. Never again will it be destroyed. Jerusalem will be secure. Okay. This is the plague with which Yahweh will strike all the nations that fought against Jerusalem. So, by the way, this is, I believe, where, you know, the movie Indiana Jones, at the end, the flesh rots, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time. I should watch that movie sometime in the near future. I think I started watching it and I found it very boring because it was all action. But at the end, maybe I should watch the last scene, right? When the ark appears or the ark is taken out, then all of the flesh rots off of people's bodies, if I remember correctly. And I'm quite sure that the makers of that movie, who was it? George Lucas, I can't remember, that they got that idea from this verse right here. Their flesh will rot while they are standing on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. On that day, people will be stricken by Yahweh with great panic. They will seize each other by the hand and attack one another. Judah too will fight at Jerusalem. The wealth of all the surrounding nations will be collected. Great quantities of silver, of gold and silver and clothing. A similar plague will strike the horses and mules, the camels and donkeys, and all the animals, the animals in those camps. Then, so that's it. The enemies, the attackers of Jerusalem will be destroyed. And the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, Yahweh Almighty, and to celebrate, it says really Yahweh of armies, but and to celebrate the festival of tabernacles, of Sukkot. If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, they will have no rain. And if the Egyptian people do not go up and take part, they will have no rain. Yahweh will bring on them the plague he inflicts upon the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of Sukkot. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the festival of tabernacles. On that day, holy to Yahweh will be inscribed on the bells of the horses, and the cooking pots in the house of Yahweh will be like the sacred bowls in front of the altar. Every pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy to Yahweh Almighty, and all who come to sacrifice will take some of the pots and cook in them, and on that day there will no longer be a Canaanite, a merchant, a money changer in the house of Yahweh Almighty. And that's what we have there. Let me just do one quick thing if I can. I'm going to do a little tricky poo. I want to get rid of these little arrow thingies that driving me nuts. And let's see if we can do that. So, you know, my previous profession, or my sometimes still profession, my day job is do this correctly. Image. That's if I can't do them, I'm not do it. Copy declaration. Copy. Oh, that's for all images. It's this one, element style. Do it. Try it one last time. There we go. Get rid of it. No, it didn't, unfortunately. Sorry about this. Give me one more second here. Give me one more second. No, I'm just going to drop. I just want to get rid of these images here. Source. Div left. That's what I'll div left. One more time. Does it work? Forget it. No, it's not. I'll have to do this another time. Okay. I'm just trying to get rid of those arrows, which drive me crazy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Anyway, so that is the end of the book of Zechariah. That's the end of the book of Zechariah. Any questions, any comments before we go on to Leviticus chapter 26? Melech, do you do an updated teaching on the name of God? Yes, I absolutely can. The name of God is very clearly, I will try to get to it, not right now, but the name of God is clearly pronounced Yahweh. The idea that it's pronounced Yehovah, as one particular Karaite is promoting, I don't even know why this person is still promoting it, because he's supposed to be a textual expert, and his analysis is so infantile. I can understand why many years ago he's promoting. I can only surmise that this was something he came up with many years ago, and that he does not want to change his mind because he's built his reputation on it. But it's so, once you get into the details of biblical Hebrew, it is so ridiculous. It's almost infantile to say that the name is pronounced Yehovah clearly, and there's so many proofs of it. The vowels, when you do see the text, which is usually written as a yud with a shwa, and then a hey with no vowel, and then a wow with a kamatz. If you're not familiar with biblical Hebrew, with biblical grammar, then you may not know what I'm talking about. At any rate, the way it's written is so clearly the vowels of Adonai that it's just at this point, it's just infantile to say that those are the actual vowels there. So to make a long story short, I'm not going to get into the whole thing right now. The name is I won't say 100%. There's always a possibility for everything, but 99.9% for sure the name is not pronounced Yehovah. Those are substitute vowels for Adonai. So how can the shva under the yud hey wow hey be a substitute for the chatef patach under the aleph in Adonai? Because aleph is it's a guttural letter, it's a glottal stop, whereas yud is not, and the chatef vowels, again, I'm sorry if I'm getting too technical, the chatef vowels almost always occur only with the gutturals. There are exceptions where they occur with non-gutturals, especially in the Ben Asher variations of the Masoretic texts rather than the Ben Naphtali variations of the Masoretic texts. But for the most part, in both Masoretic textual traditions, Tiberian Masoretic textual traditions, then the Chatef Patach is almost exclusively under the guttural letters, Aleph, Hey, Ayin, Het. So there's no contradiction. The Chatef Patach would not appear under a Yud. It would be replaced with a Shwa. Chatef Patach is really, it's a Patach with a Shwa. And that already hints at it. They're really interchangeable. Anyway, I won't get into the details right now. If that's too technical for you, then let me just say that I can assure you with 99.9% surety that the pronunciation is not Yehovah, and that it is Yahweh, or something very close to Yahweh. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other comments before we take a quick break and then go into Leviticus chapter 26? Okay, and I guess what we're going to do now is I'll take a quick break, 5 minutes or so, and then we're going to dig into Leviticus chapter 26. We are in verse 23. And when we get to the end of it, I'm going to try. We have a little bit more time today because we started a little bit earlier than usual. But so I'll try to get to the end of Leviticus 26. If so, then we have only one more chapter in Leviticus, it's chapter 27. And then we'll move on to Numbers. Okay. So I will see you guys back in just a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back. Okay, we're back. We're going to dig in now to Leviticus chapter 26. We're going to try to finish the chapter. And so let me share the screen. There we go. Quick speed test. Make sure I don't have to switch. Oh, it's going to... Okay. So, all right, we're in Leviticus chapter 26. Remember, this is the chapter of the blessing and the curse, right? Or the reward for obedience, the punishment for disobedience. I'll read starting from chapter verse 14, just in the English again, by way of review. And then when we get up to verse 23, which is where we left off last time, then we'll switch back over to the Hebrew. So, in fact, I should open up my Epic Fox as well, since we don't constantly have to be relying on Robert Alter as a second eye, but he is very good. do a little bit of Everett Fox, and one of these days I will also pop open the Ibn Ezra, who's a rabbinical commentator, but an excellent, I would almost say Karaite leaning. He mentions the one of the Karaite, one of his contemporary Karaite commentators a number of times. It's I don't know how to name Yefet Ben Eli a number of times, and he's a very Karaite leaning rabbinical, albeit rabbinical Jew, but rabbinical interpreter of the Torah. But I don't want to do that right now. It just slow us down. I don't want to get through Leviticus chapter 26. This. There we go. So, instead of reading the NIV, let's read the Everett Fox. So we're starting in verse 14. Okay, also an excellent translation, available free online. If you type in Everett Fox, translation of the 5 books of Moses, you should be able to find it online. But if you do not hearken to me by not observing all these commandments, if my laws you spurn, and my regulations you repel by not observing all my commandments, by violating my covenant, I will in turn do this to you. I will mete out to you shock, consumption, and fever, wearing out of the eyes and exhausting the breath. You will sow your seed for naught, your enemies will eat it. And I will set my face against you. You will be hit by the plague in the face of your enemies. Those who hate you will have dominion over you. You will flee with no one pursuing you. Now, if after that you do not hearken to me, I will continue to discipline you sevenfold for your sins. I will break your fierce pride. I will give your heavens to be like iron and your earth like bronze. Let me see that a little bigger. So that your power will be spent for naught. Your land will not give forth its yield. The trees of the land will not give forth their fruit. Now, if you walk with me in opposition and do not consent to hearken to me, I will continue against you blows sevenfold according to your sins. I will send loose against you the wild beasts of the field, so that they bereave you, so that they utterly cut off your animals, so that they make you few and your roads become desolate. Remember, we said that wild beasts were a real thing back in Israel, mostly lions and bears. And if you think that's something that primitive people have to worry about, as we said last year, if you live in the Northeast or maybe even out west, but in the Northeast, bears are still to this day, if you live in a rural area or a very sparsely populated area, black bears are a problem or a threat to human beings to this day. There have been injuries and deaths even from black bears. So now imagine if there are lions roaming all over the place. These cats. My little guy here. Like, show. You think you're a big cat, but you're not. Just a little guy. Tough little guy. Okay, we're in verse 23. We're going to switch over to the Hebrew. So verse 23. ואם באלה לא תיווסרו לי והלכתם עמי קרי. So if with all of these punishments you are not chastened, you are not subdued, you are not you don't give in, do not accept my correction, Everett Fox, do not accept discipline from me, then I am going to go deliberately against you. Then I will strike you. I also, or I in response, will strike you 7 times or sevenfold for your sins. So I think this is the third sevenfold we've run into, if I'm not mistaken. It's the third sevenfold we've run into. Let's see. 7 times over in verse 18. 7 times over in verse 21. So another 7 times. So we're up to 49. And then we've got another 7 times. So 49 times 7. Well, let's see. That's going to be 50 times 7 minus 7. 100 times 7 is 700. Half of that is 350 minus 7 is going to be 343. So now God has increased his punishment 343-fold. If I've done that correctly. That's a lot. And of course, this is meant to be poetic. It's not a mathematical equation, but just to bring out, you know, the gravity of the situation, right? He's now increased the punishment 343. That is going to be 343 times. It's going to be 34,300% worse than the original punishments that he brought upon Israel. Let's see if there's any commentary here. 24. Not so far. 23. Yeah, 23. Robert Alter has to say, the section of curses is structured as a sequence of downward spiraling disasters after each set of punishing blows. God, as it were, pauses to see if Israel will correct its ways. When this does not happen, intensifies the catastrophe, which will culminate in exile. Okay, verse 25. Verse 25. So I will bring upon you an avenging sword. When esaftem el arechem, it will avenge the covenant. Covenant meaning the contract, the treaty, the Torah, right? The treaty, the covenant between Yahweh and Israel. And esaftem el arechem, you will be gathered. You will hide away in your cities. You withdraw into your cities. Every fox. I will bring against you an avenging sword, taking vengeance for the covenant. You gather yourself into your cities. So it's a predicate phrase. I don't agree with that because we have an etnach here. I don't agree with that translation. You will gather yourself into your cities. I will send a plague among you. It's a minor point, but anyway. When he taught them biyad oyev, and I will give you over into the hands of your enemies. I will send free pestilence in your midst, and you will be given into the hand of your enemies. Wanitatem, correct, passive form of the verb. So you will be given over into the hands of the enemy. Robert Alter on that one. What, Joshua? No, not now, sweetie boy. No, not now, boy. That's the cuddle. Show. Oh, I'm sure she plays soon, sweetie boy. I promise. Okay, come, go down. Such a cute cat. We found him when he was just a tiny little nothing. And I will bring against you the avenging sword of the covenant's vengeance, and you shall gather into your towns, and I will send pestilence in your midst, and you shall be given into an enemy's hands. And commentary on that. The avenging sword of the covenant's vengeance. Robert Alter has to say, a covenant is both a promise and a threat. For those who violate their covenantal obligations, vengeance is exacted. And this is, a lot of scholars will say that the Torah, the covenant of the Torah, follows a typical format for covenants, for treaties in the ancient Near East. And one of the aspects of ancient Near East, Shosho, sweetheart, not right now, baby. Okay? No. Oh, sweetie boy. Oh, no. Soon. Okay, soon, I promise. Okay. And one of the aspects of these typical Near Eastern covenants is a blessing and a curse. If you keep, right? So I don't know. We even see it in the covenant that's made between Jacob, Yaakov, and Lavan. I'm not going to go to it now. Maybe I will for a second. Just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second here, just to bring out the point. So we go to Genesis 31. If we go to Genesis chapter 31, Shosho, no, sweet. Show. Soon. I'm going to let him outside. Come. Come, baby. Come. Yes. Oh. So in Genesis chapter 31, so Jacob has fled from his evil uncle Laban. And let's find it. And Lavan eventually catches up to Jacob. And so we pick it up, and I'm just going to read in the English to make it go a bit more quickly. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. This is another element of a Near Eastern treaty, that there's some kind of physical sign. In this case, it's a stone set up as a pillar. He said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones and piled them up in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Lavan called it Jagar Sahatuta, and Jacob called it Gal-ed, which means the heap, the stone heap of witnessing. You know, it's so much better in the Hebrew, but I don't want to sidetrack that much. Lavan said, this heap is a witness between you and me today. This is why it's called Gal-ed. It was also called Mitzpah, because he said, may the Lord keep watch. So Mitzpah comes from the underlying Hebrew root Tzapah, Sadi Pehe, which means to look, to watch over. May Yahweh keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is witness between you and me. So this is kind of, right, the Tanaim, I can't remember the clauses of the covenant. Lavan also said to Jacob, here's this heap. Here's this pillar I've set up between you and me. This heap is a witness. This heap is a witness, and this pillar is a witness that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, and the God of their father judge between us. Right, so it doesn't mention explicit curses, but it implies it. That if either one crosses this Gal-ed, this heap, this witnessing stone heap, then God will judge that person. That's the curse. Okay, they offered a sacrifice there, and they ate a meal. That's another element, typical element of an ancient Near East covenant. That bread, they break bread, to kind of consummate the treaty. Okay, so we see many of the elements, all of the elements, just about there, and we see that here, right? That vengeance, or we're going back to Robert Alter's covenant, Robert Alter's comment, right? A covenant is both a promise and a threat for those who violate their covenantal obligations. Vengeance is exacted. It's no different. I mean, listen, we don't need to be Near East scholars to figure out that it just makes common sense. It's even written if you make a business contract with someone in this day and age, right? There are consequences for violating the contract. Okay, if you do not, finish the house that you're agreeing to build by such and such date, then I get a refund of 25% or whatever, right? And if you do, then your reward is that you will be paid such amount of money. So there's already reward and punishment in just an average contract. It makes sense. But this is other elements as well, right? This is swearing to a god. We saw that. We see that here in Genesis 31. They swear to. So their common ancestor is Nahor, and there's swearing to a god. There's the breaking of bread. Even in this day and age, if you make a business contract, right? Maybe you're going to consummate it with a, you're going to drink a toast afterwards, right? To our mutual success in this contract, right? So the more things change, the more they stay the same. So if you just make a business contract in this day and age, some kind of contract, there's going to be a blessing, right? There's going to be a curse, or there's going to be a reward. There's going to be a punishment. There's not usually a swearing to a god, but there might be an appeal to something like I affirm all of, there's an affirmation at the end of the contract. I affirm, that I will keep all of the clauses in this contract. Then a toast is drunk between the two signers of the contract, and so on and so forth, right? So things haven't changed that much in 3,250 years or so. Okay, let me just check in and see if there are any questions or comments. I guess not. I don't see anything. You guys can all hear me? Is that correct? I'm assuming so. Okay. Radio. Where were we? Right. You'll be given over to into the hands of your enemies. Bishivri lachem lachem. When I break, or in my breaking of for you, literally it says in my breaking for you the staff of bread. In other words, you're not going to be able to make ends meet. You're not going to have enough. You're not going to be able to get food on your table. With afu eser nashim lachmechem בתנור אחד, וישיבו לחמכם במשקל, אכלתם ולא תשבעו. So 10 women shall bake their bread in a single oven, and when you weigh your bread, when you bring back your bread to weigh, and you eat it, you will not be satisfied. So this is the idea. This alludes to a communal oven. This still exists today. I've spent, as I've mentioned a bunch of times, I've spent close to a year of my life, not in sequence, but overall close to a year of my life in Morocco. And I remember in the small villages in Morocco, I was up in the Atlas Mountains for a lot of that time, in a very small village, living among a Muslim family, believe it or not, that I'd become very close to, and still I'm close to this day. And there was a communal oven in all of these small towns, or in the nearby town. If they didn't have it in that town itself, there were communal ovens. I even remember in Marrakesh seeing communal ovens and when I say oven, I mean an old style oven, like a wood burning stove, usually either made out of metal or sometimes made out of stone. And all of the people from the neighborhood, or all of the people from the village, the women would bring whatever they wanted to bake, and they put it in the oven, and then they'd come pick it up when it's up to this day. I'm talking about in the year 2026. At any rate, so the idea is clear. I will break the staff of your food, your bread. You will not have enough food. You won't be able to put enough food on your table. And if even with this you will not listen to me and you will go against me deliberately, then I will furiously go against you. Hama means like with heat, with a fiery fury. And I will punish you. Once I again will punish you another sevenfold for your sins. So what are we up to? So now we're up to 343 times 7. Okay, I got to do this one in my head. So 343 times 10 is 3,430. Minus 900, 3,430, 2,530 minus 150, 2,930, 2,780 plus 21, 2,801, if I'm not mistaken. If I did that correctly in my head. Let's check. Say 801. I got it. 2,401. So that's a lot of time. So punishment has increased 2,000-fold at this point. Again, this is not a scientific statement. This is meant to be poetic, but to get the idea that each time so Yahweh is bringing punishment, and if that punishment isn't enough to make Israel turn back to him, then the punishment is increased. It doesn't get a little bit higher; it increases. It's a different level of punishment, right? It's sevenfold each time. It's just a completely different level of punishment each time. Is the idea. So here we see. So 2,401 times the original punishment, figuratively speaking, not literally. You'll eat the flesh of your children. I'm sorry, the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. Tochelu. So you will eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters you will eat. I will destroy your high places, your places of idol worship. High places, that's where idols were generally worshipped. They were worshipped on hilltops. If you go on to the World Alliance of Qara'im YouTube channel, we visited not too long ago, in the past, let's say 2 months, we visited Tel Dan, the excavation of the city of Dan, and there was a high place, believed to be the high place that King Yerovam, who was the first, who after the United Kingdom under David and Solomon split after the death of Solomon, so King Yerovam in English set up 2 golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan, and the place where he set it up and down is believed to have been found and excavated, and we did a video on that, so you can see an actual high place, and it is indeed. You'll see it's up on kind of an elevated area, a hill. Okay. והכרעתי את חמניכם, נתתי את פגריכם על פגרי גילוליכם. This is pretty darn graphic. So let's look at this word chamanechem. This also is a word that doesn't appear very often. Only a couple of times. I don't know. Appears very sun pillar. From the word chama. Chama means the sun, or literally the hot thing, the hot glowing thing in the sky. The sun. Okay, so let's just understand this word a little bit. So Haman, first the pagan sun pillars or incense altars that were integral to Canaanite and syncretistic Israelite worship. Syncretism means a mix of different gods or different types of worship, always appearing in the plural. The term designates upright stone columns or small standing altars placed at high places. So we spoke about the high place. That's the traditional place, the Bama in Hebrew, the traditional place where idols were worshipped. Their purpose was to honor the sun deity and to serve as focal points for offerings and incense. Scripture constantly treats these objects as detestable, marking them for destruction along with the rest of the paraphernalia of idolatry. And as we said, the underlying root or the underlying word here is Chama, which means sun. Literally hot thing. Ham. Hot. So that's the beauty of biblical Hebrew. And by the way, if you're not learning biblical Hebrew with me in private lessons, I do offer private lessons. So you can contact me and we'll talk about that. And it will make a huge impact on your ability to really understand the Tanakh. But anyway, this is not the time for an advertisement of any sort. Talk to me privately if you're interested in that. But the point that I really wanted to make is that that's the way Hebrew roots work. So Hebrew words are based on roots, usually 3-letter roots, and by understanding the 3-letter root of a word, you can kind of get to the essence of its meaning. So again, we see the example here, right? So we have this Haman, which means, sun pillar, as they translate it here, or the BDB translates it as sun pillar, right? Place used for worship of the sun, coming from Hama, which means sun. One of the words for sun. Also, Shemesh is another word for sun. But one of the words for sun, Hama, which comes from the underlying root Ham, which means hot. So it all relates, right? It's a beautiful thing about biblical Hebrew. Okay, so so I will destroy your sun pillars. I'll break down your sun pillars. And I will. Now this is graphic. So we see we're already up to 2,401 times the punishment. We see the punishments are getting not progressively worse; they're getting exponentially worse. And this is literally exponentially, right? Because it's 7. It's the original sin, and then so 7 to the 0, 7-fold. That's 7 to the power of 1. 7-fold again, 7 to the power of 2. Again, 7 to the power of 3. Again, we're up to 7 to the power of 4, right? That's our 2,401. So we can see it like this, 7. So we start with 1 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, right? So this is actually, for those of you who have a math and science background, this is exponential growth. It's getting exponentially worse. If we were to plot this, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I like to keep it interesting. So let's see, is it alpha? From alpha So how do we plot? Let's plot this. Plot 7 to the power of x. There we go. How do we make this bigger? Enlarge. How do I make it bigger? You get the idea. Okay, set our range, data. Anyway, you guys get the idea, right? From -2 to 2, how do I change the range here? Customize. Input, download for image, automatic. Hold on a second. I'm dying to do this. Data download. Math input. It's the keyboard. Plot. Here it is, from -12 to 12. So I'm not, so there, this is well, it's so exponential. I really want to get it from 0 to 4, from -1 to 4. Anyway, you guys get the idea. This is an exponential plot. Okay, 7 to the power of x. And so it doesn't just increase like this linearly or even parabolically. It increases exponentially. When they talk about exponential growth, like the growth of, let's say, bacteria that divide, that reproduce, and then each one of those reproduces, it divides again, and so on. That's exponential growth. And that's what we have here. That's what the Torah is talking about. It's bad. When you get exponential growth, well, it's either really good or really bad. In this case, really bad. So what do we have here? I will break down your sun altars, and I will throw your dead bodies upon the dead bodies, quote unquote, of your idols. Right? So we have a very graphic image there. I'm going to break down these places of idol worship. The idols are going to be broken into pieces, and then your dead bodies are going to be thrown on top of those knocked down idols. Vira'ala nashi etchem, and my soul or myself will revile you. Will grow sick and tired of you. Will want to vomit over you. Here, abhor you. Everett Fox translates that as, close some of these off. Everett Fox translates that as I will destroy your high places. I will cut down your cult stands. I will place your corpses atop the corpses of your idol clods. I will repel you. And Robert Alter translates that as I'll destroy your cult places and cut off your incense stands, and I will put your corpses on top of the corpses of your fetishes, and I will loathe you. Let's get a little commentary on that one. So 28, ominously, God now adds the component of wrath, Hakham. We spoke about that. Translated as furiously go against you. To the reiterated noun keri, suggesting divine hostility is now ready to trump Israelite hostility in a climatic set of disasters. Shall eat the flesh of your sons. On this grisly detail, see the commentary and comment on Deuteronomy 28:53. The verse is arranged as a neat chiasm. Chiasm is kind of it's a literary structure, which is kind of a mirroring structure. So eat flesh of your sons, eat flesh of your daughters, eat. It's rhetorical means of hammering home horrific images. We'll get into that right now. Your corpses on the corpses of your fetishes, although logically fetishes cannot have corpses, not ever having been alive. The same word is pointedly repeated, suggesting a bitter equation between the inert, heaped up bodies of the fetish worshippers and the inert, lifeless fetishes, which have been corpses all along and now deprived of worshippers, are all the more conspicuously sheer dead matter. Alrighty. ונתתי את עריכם חרבה. I will destroy your cities with the sword, or I will destroy your cities completely. Turn your cities into ruins. Harava, Khurban. So I turn your cities into ruins. And I will make your holy places become desolate. Lay waste to your sanctuaries. Right? Meaning your idol worshipping sanctuaries that are in the cities. Right? I'll destroy your cities. I'll turn your city into ruins. I like that translation better. Vashimoti. The underlying root there is shamam. Shimoti. Double, what's called a doubling dagesh. Dagesh forte, for those of you who are learning with me. So shamam, which means desolation. Vashimoti et miktashechem. I will make your holy places, holy places to your idols, your places of idol worship, I will make them desolate. Or maybe this is not speaking about the place of the idol worship, because here it says, "Velo ariach bereach nichochem," and I will not smell the sweet smelling scent, is the way these usually translate it. So this is clearly speaking about places of worship that should have been used for Yahweh, maybe ostensibly now have been used for idol worship, repurposed for idol worship, that they're going to be destroyed. In other words, there will be no more sacrifices being given to Yahweh, because everything is going to be destroyed, and Yahweh will no longer, it's a phrase that's used a lot, the idea of a re'ech nichoach, a sweet-smelling scent, they usually translate it as, and what it means is that Yahweh will smell the scent of the burning sacrifices, and that pleases him, because he understands that that's a sign that Israel is remembering him, is burning sacrifices to him. Robert Alter on that one, that's 31. The plural surely suggests that in this text a single central sanctuary is not presupposed. That's a whole other can of worms that I won't open up right now. The reference is to the fragrance of the sacrifice burned on the altar, and thought, at least in the pre-Israelite period, to be a pleasing aroma in the nostrils of the gods. By the time of the writing of this text, it may have become a dead metaphor, simply meaning I will not look with favor on your sacrifices. I think it means, the phrase is used many times throughout the Tanakh. I disagree with Robert Alter on this one. I think it means the same thing, that Yahweh is going to, figuratively speaking though, not a dead metaphor, but figuratively speaking, smell the burning of the sacrifices. Just like when you pass by, I'm a vegetarian, but still, even if I pass by a place where a barbecue is going on, that scent of the roasting meat definitely is tempting. And so that's what it's speaking about here. The scent of the roasting sacrifices is going to be, figuratively speaking, pleasing to Yahweh, because of what it represents. It represents that Israel is remembering Yahweh, that Israel is following the rules for the sacrifices, the laws for the sacrifices that are laid out in other places in the Torah, like the beginning of, like the first opening chapters, or middle chapters of Leviticus that we studied in detail. Okay, that's verse 31. Verse 32. Hashimoti ani et haaretz. I will make the land desolate. In Israel, I'll make the land of Israel desolate. Here I even like this translation better. I myself will lay waste to the land. So that's ani, emphasizing I personally. In other words, Yahweh is saying, that's it. I'm going ballistic. Maybe that's not the best word to use. Based on all the ballistic missiles that have been shot at Israel over the past year or two. But that's it. He's had enough. He's personally now involved. It's personal. Okay. Hashimoti ani et haaretz. I personally am going to make the land a wasteland. Make the land, they lay waste to the land. Shamamur alecha, aleha, oivechem, hayshvim bah. Shamamu, this is a play on words, but it means they're going to be astonished, or they're going to be. I'm trying to think of a good translation. Let's get Everett Fox's help on this one. And I will make desolate, I myself, the land, right? So he emphasizes here, I myself, right? It's now personal. Yahweh has had enough. That's it. He's fed up. That's the end. No more mercy. Enough. So that your enemies that settlement will be appalled at the desolation in it. So that's a nice way of translating it. Appalled at the desolation in it. So it literally means, or I would say more literally means, shamamu aleha. So literally, kind of literally, it's saying your enemies shall become desolate because of it or over it, talking about over the land. Meaning, Robert Alter deals with this very nicely. Your enemies that settle it, they will be appalled at the desolation in it. Robert Alter on that one. It's 32. He doesn't have a comment on. Oh, he has a translation. His translation is, and I myself will lay waste to the land, and all your enemies who settle in it shall be appalled by it. I like Everett Fox's translation better on this one, because he picks up on the fact that in Hebrew, I will make it desolate, and your enemies will settle in it and will be appalled at the desolation in it. So he's picking up on the Hebrew. See, the good translators, such as Robert Alter, such as Everett Fox, will do that. They'll try to find clever ways in the English to pick up on some of the connections that you see in the Hebrew. Right? So literally, this is a play on words in Hebrew. I will make the land, I personally will make the land desolate. And your enemies that inhabit it, that take it over, they shall become desolate. That's what it really means, but they should be appalled at the desolation. That's the way Everett Fox deals with that one. I got to go back and plug in. I'm going to go back to where we were before. So again, bear with me for just a second here. So we can do this in one shot. Okie dokie. Just give me a second here. Light. Look at this. It's dark here in Israel. And let me plug in. Okay. Okay, so right, so this is verse 32. So things are getting pretty bad, right? That's it. Yahweh, he is fed up. He has had enough. That's it. He's going all out. Now he's going totally hog wild on Israel. Had enough. The end. Letrem, and this is maybe the ultimate punishment. Watrem is I will scatter you among the nations. And I will open up, I will empty out my sword upon you. I will lay out, that's a better translation. Draw out my sword. That's a decent translation. Draw out my sword. Everett Fox. Okay, I will unsheath. I like that one better. I'll unsheath. Literally means empty out, but meaning empty out of the sheath. That's a very good translation. Robert Alter. Unsheath. So we'll go with unsheath on that one. Harikoti acharem charev. So I will unsheath my sword upon you, right? That's it. sheath, meaning take it out of its sheath and off it goes. And your land shall be desolate. Again, we've now seen this desolate once here, twice, 3 times, 4 times in just a couple of verses. Right, so that's what the Torah does, especially in its poetic, and this is poetic. It's poetic verses. It does a lot of wordplay, and one of the ways it does wordplay is to repeat words or words that are close to each other that have the same root. And your cities will be laid waste, will be destroyed, will lie in ruins, even better. And we've seen this Hebrew word harav appear a bunch of times. So the underlying root is harev, which is sword, but it means to be laid waste by the sword, by extension. So here we have harev and a bunch of other places. Harba over here. Right. So again, if we look at the root, harba, ruin, lay waste. So my mistake. I don't think it's related to cherev, to sword, but it's 1 second here. But it's the same consonants, so it's still used as a play on words. Since it's harba. Let's see something here. So we can get back to see something here. Yeah, it does ultimately come back. Sword. So yes, it is related. So ultimately it goes back to sword, meaning destruction, as if destruction by the sword, right? Completely destroyed. Desolation. I don't think drought and dryness, I mean, it can mean that. But really, the implication is more like desolation and waste. In other words, something that's been completely destroyed by the sword. Okay. Got a lot more to explore there, but let's move on. This is I like this verse. Az tipseh haaretz et shabboteha. Let me translate this. So then the land will receive. Receive is not a good translation. Then the land will gain as reward, will get what it deserves, will get the Sabbaths that it deserves. So what does that mean? The translate is enjoy. Yeah, it's a decent translation. Let's see how Everett Fox deals with that one. Then the land will find acceptance regarding its Sabbaths. I'm not sure I know what he's getting at, but I'm not sure I like that translation. Robert Alter, then the land shall expiate. Expiate even means, right? We'd have to look that one up. But the idea that's being stated here in the Hebrew, az tirtzeh. So, so what is this speaking about? So we learned in Leviticus chapter 25, the previous chapter, that every 7 years the land is to lie fallow. The Israelites are not supposed to plant, or they're not supposed to reap in every 7th agricultural year. It's supposed to be a year in which the land rests. And we saw in Leviticus 25, the previous chapter, that's called a Shabbat, right? It's the year of rest every 7 years. Just as Shabbat, Sabbath, that we're celebrating now, it's over here in Israel, happens every 7 days. So the Shabbat regarding the land happens every 7 years. The land lies, there's no planting and there's no formal harvesting. everyone, the poor, the widow, the orphan, the sojourner, and the family who owns the land, they just pick as they need. The produce is not marketed. It's not sold as markets. Everyone can come and take. So then the land will pleasantly receive, will be satisfied with. I don't know. I like this one. Will enjoy its Sabbaths, I think is actually the best. Right? Why? Because you're not going to be there. So what is Yahweh saying here? What is the Torah saying here? The Torah is saying that you didn't give the land its rest every 7 years. You disobeyed my covenant. You didn't allow the land to rest every 7 years. And so when you're gone, when I scatter you among the nations, destroy your cities and scatter you among the nations, and draw out my sword against you, the land is going to be, you're not going to be in the land anymore. So then the land will rest, finally. You didn't want to give it its rest while you were in it. Now you're gone. You're scattered among the nations. The land is desolate. Then it's going to rest. It's finally going to get its rests. Right? It's kind of a beautiful kind of karma. Kol yemei hashama, all the days of its desolation, meaning all the days that you are not there, because you've been scattered among your enemies. V'tem ba'aretz, v'tem be'eretz oivechem, and while you are in the lands of your enemies. And it's repeated here. Az tishbat ha'aretz. Then the land shall rest. V'hietza et shabtotecha, and will enjoy its rest. Will enjoy its Sabbaths. This is reiterated. It's very poetic, right? Let's get NIV on that one. Then the land will enjoy its Sabbaths, Sabbath years, all the time that it lies desolate and you are in the country of your enemies. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbaths, right? So Yahweh is pissed off, man. He is pissed off. He's had enough. He's going all out. He's going hog wild on the Israelites. Shavua Tov. So again, it's repeated. And we know whenever the Torah repeats, repetition means, I've said it many times, repetition means emphasis. Repetition means emphasis. And here, this is the third time this concept is being repeated. Verse 35. Kol yemei hashama tishbot et asher lo shavta. So all the days of the desolation, it will rest. It will have its Sabbaths. Et asher lo shavta, that the Sabbaths that it did not receive, when it did not rest. B'shabtotechem, b'shivtechem alecha, in those Sabbath years while you were dwelling in it. Right? So all the days of it, all the days that it lies desolate. Why is it lying desolate? Because you, Israel, have been thrown out of it. You're now scattered among your enemies, as we spoke about in the opening monologue, right? It's a punishment that Israel faced for disobeying the covenant of the Torah and adopting false philosophies such as rabbinical Judaism. Remember that right after rabbinical, within a couple of hundred years, if not less, from the rise of rabbinical Judaism, the Second Temple was destroyed. And Israel at that point went out once again into exile and stayed in exile essentially until approximately 150 years ago, when the Zionist movement, the modern Zionist movement, began to arise. And at the same time, there was a throwing off of rabbinical Judaism, of the influence of the rabbis in the past couple of hundred years. So if we look at it, let's date the beginning of the rabbinical movement to give or take 200 BCE. 70 CE, so we're talking about close to 300 years, 270 years later, Second Temple is destroyed. That essentially is the beginning of, we could say, the exile. A lot of Jews at that point were deported to Rome and other places, and that was the end of an era, let's put it that way. So within 300 years, after the rise of rabbinical Judaism, Israel went into exile. Israel stayed in exile until a couple of hundred years ago, let's say 300 years ago. So we're getting back to around 1700. It's around when what's called the emancipation began. It's the modern emancipation of Jews, meaning that they were given rights within the various European nations. And that led further to the Enlightenment. That's around the time of the French Revolution, around the time of the American Revolution in the 1700s. That led 100 years later or so to the Zionist movement and the return to Israel. So we see a mirror, and throwing off at the same time of rabbinical Judaism, right? So rabbinical Judaism starts 200 CE. Within 300 years, Israel is exiled, is thrown into exile. Stays in exile until, let's say, 1700, give or take. 300 years ago, emancipation, Enlightenment, all of these things weakened or were signs that Israel was ready to move back ultimately towards the land of Israel and throw off the burden, the disease, the scourge of rabbinical Judaism. And that's the movement we've had for the past 300 years. The return to the land of Israel, the frozen state of exile that we're in from let's say, 100 CE until 1700 CE. So 1600 years began to be thrown off 300 years ago, culminating in a movement away from rabbinical Judaism simultaneously with a movement back for those who survived it, the Holocausts, pogroms, but a movement back towards the land of Israel, combined with a movement away from rabbinical Judaism. So we see the two ends of that, right? Of that, they're mirroring each other. Rabbinical Judaism starts within 300 years. Exile begins 300 years ago. Exile begins to end. Rabbinical Judaism begins to end. And now we're coming back to the land of Israel. And rabbinical Judaism is weakening day by day. That's going back to my original opening monologue. That's why they had to issue this letter against me, because they know their fate is sealed. They know what the future is of rabbinical Judaism. They know their days are numbered. They know it. So it's like it's an act of desperation. A lot more to say about that, but we'll say it another time. So kol yemei hashama tishbot et asher lo shavta b'shabtotechem b'shiftechem alehem. So all the days of its desolation, it shall get its Sabbaths. It shall rest. That which it did not, the rest that it did not get, or the Sabbaths that it did not get, b'shabtotechem, during the Sabbath years that you were supposed to keep when you were inhabited, when you were dwelling upon the land. Right? So we have this repetition, poetic repetition. I'm going to count it up. The word Shabbat is mentioned probably here between 5 and 10 times. Right? That's verse 35. Yeah, this is a horrible translation, unfortunately, because it doesn't bring out the fact that the underlying root Shabbat, Sabbath, is used again and again. See what Everett Fox does with that one. All the days of desolation, it will enjoy cessation, since it did not enjoy cessation during the Sabbaths when you were settled on it. A bit better. Robert Alter, 35. So my hopes for him. All the days of the desolation, it shall keep a Sabbath for not having kept your Sabbath years when you dwelled there. Also, he doesn't really bring it out. But we'll leave it at that. Let's go on to 36. Nisharim bachem. והנשארים בכם הבאתי מורך בלבבם בארצות אויביהם. So those that remain among you, meaning those that are still alive, you're gone, you're out, you've now been thrown out of the land. We saw this happen, of course, historically speaking. 722 BCE is when the Syrians completed their conquering of the northern kingdom, and 586 is when the Babylonians completed their conquering of the southern kingdom and destruction of the first temple. So those who remain among you, meaning not in Israel, because you're all out of there according to this curse, according to this punishment. So I will bring fear, or your fear, bilavam, בלבבם. בארצות אויביהם, in the lands of their enemies. Let's get a Everett Fox on that one. Now those that remain among you, I will bring faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. ורדף אותם כל עלה נידף ונשאו מנוסת חרב ונפלו ואין רודף. Yeah, it's getting really intense and graphic now. So the sound of a leaf, you translate it as falling leaf, right? The sound of a falling leaf, I like that. רדף אותם כל עלה. So the sound of a falling leaf, a wind-blown leaf, nidaf, and they will feel that they are being chased after. So again, this is very poetic. Radaf means to chase after, to pursue. So radaf otam kol ale nidaf. So the sound of a wind-blown leaf will chase after them. Nidaf v'nasu, and they will flee, or they will feel they are being pursued, and they will run away. They will flee. Minusat cherev, as if they're being pursued by the sword. As if they're being chased by the sword. When aflu va'en rodef, and they shall fall down, meaning die. Va'en rodef, even though there's no one chasing after them. They're going to be so freaked out. The image here is that even the sound, a little sound, is going to freak them out. Right now, if you imagine the way the Jews lived, right? I don't know, in Germany during Nazi period, right? They were so terrified of every little thing because of, hold on, I have to sneeze. Right? They were living in constant fear. So much so that any little sound would freak them out. I think that's the point it's getting to for the Jews in the United States right now, slowly but surely. 36, let's see if we can get a little commentary here. So 34, Robert Alter says these words and those of the next two verses reflect both a logic of restitution and mordant satiric irony. The people has violated its obligation to keep the sabbatical year now. As the depopulated land lies fallow year after year, all those violated Sabbaths will be made up for numerically. But this is also a bitterly mocking image of the land, violently divested of its Israelite inhabitants, compelled by grim history to keep on its own a whole series of sabbatical years in which nothing is sown or reaped. 37. Yeah, we're not up to that one yet. We're in 36. Let's see how how Everett Fox translates 36. Now those that now those that remain among you, I will bring faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. They will be set in pursuit by the sound of a leaf blown about. They will flee as if in flight from a sword and will fall, though there is no pursuer. Verse 37. We're almost at the end of, how many verses do we have here? Oh, no. But we'll try to get to the end. Verse 37. Yeah, maybe we should stop soon. Otherwise, this is too much. וחשלו איש באחיו ובאחיו כי מפני חרב ורודף עין. So once again, they stumble. Translated here, I think it's a good translation. So each person will stumble over his brother, meaning his fellow, his nearest of kin. As if they're before the sword, right? As if they're again being chased by the sword. And even though there's no one pursuing them, right? So we're talking about being totally freaked out, like being such in a state of paranoia and psychosis that they're freaked out even by nothing, essentially. and you will have no chance of any kind of ability to rise up against your enemies. You will not be able to stand before your enemies. Everett Fox on that one. They will stumble, each man over his brother, as before the sword, though pursuer there is none, and you will not be able to stand your ground before your enemies. The next translation, as usual. 38. And you shall be destroyed. You shall be disappear among the nations. Will be destroyed among the nations. Isn't that exactly what happened? Again, Nazi Germany, Europe, during World War II, but there are many other examples, but that's the most recent one. And the land of your enemies shall eat you alive, shall devour you. Verse 39. So, I usually translate this as pine away. Yeah, I love this verse. I remember this verse many. First started learning Torah. I don't know why this verse stuck out. I just want to see it again. Yeah, melt. So those that remain among you, meaning the few that remain that are not destroyed in the lands of your enemies, literally they will melt away in their sin. I usually translate here, they pine in their sin. In the land of your enemies. And also because of the sins of their fathers, they will melt away. They will pine away. Let's get Everett Fox on that one. Those that remain among you will rot away in their iniquity. In the lands of their enemies, yes, because of the iniquities of their fathers, with them they shall rot away. That's what we were talking about, right? So I was talking about in the monologue when this rabbinical decree against the heretical Karaite, such as myself, right, said I rejected the tradition of the ancestors. Well, here we see this is the tradition of their ancestors, the iniquity, their iniquities and the iniquities of their fathers. That's what the rabbinical Jews are holding on to. They're not holding on to the Torah. They're holding on to their iniquities and the iniquities of their fathers. Their tradition is exactly this. It's their ancestors that disobeyed the Torah, that disobeyed the covenant, and they're holding on to that iniquity. They're holding on to that disobedience. That's what the Torah says. Not that for the past 2,000 years we've been doing it the right way, so we should continue doing it. But here, once again, explicitly, we see that we're supposed to reject the ways of our fathers, not accept it. Verse 40. This is the verse I read earlier during the monologue. It's translated up to there. So they will admit, confess their evil and the evil of their fathers, sins and the sins of their fathers, in the transgressions and the betrayals which they betrayed against me. And the fact that they deliberately fought against me, went against me. I love this verse. Verse 40, let's get an Everett Fox on this one. Now, should they confess, he's doing it as a predicate. Now, should they confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers in their breaking faith, which they broke faith with me? Yes, since they have walked with me in opposition. Robert Alter on that one. Verse 40. Yeah, so he doesn't do it as a predecessor. I see now Everett Fox a lot of times does it as an if-then, but I agree here with Robert Alter. He doesn't do it. So, and they shall confess their guilt and the guilt of their fathers in their betraying my trust, and also in their coming in encounter against me. Soon, we'll give you your food. Okay. other cat wants to cuddle. He just really wants his food. Right? Woo. Soon, sweetie boy. Verse 41. Af ani elech imaram bakeri. Then I will deliberately go against them. I will. No. I can't move sweetheart. Viveti otam ba'eretz oivehem. And I will win. And once I brought them into the lands of an enemy, or once I will have, and having brought them into the lands of their enemies, or as then, sweetie boy, come here, baby, come. I'll give you food soon, okay? What, baby? Go down. Let's go. No, let's go. Look, come here, my baby. There you go. Soon I'm going to give you food. Okay. Or as יקנה לבם הערל, or as ירצו את עוונם. So, right. Then I will go against them with force, deliberately, or with purpose. And having brought them, I'm going to translate it this way, having brought them into the lands of their enemies, then their uncircumcised hearts will surrender, will be subdued, and then they will finally fulfill their sin. They will have fulfilled the punishment for their sin. That's verse 41. Let's get an Everett Fox on that one. Yes, I myself will walk with them in opposition, and I will bring them into the land of their enemies. If then their foreskinned heart shall humble itself, if then they should find acceptance regarding their iniquity, or Robert Alter on that one. So I, on my part, will come and counter against them and bring them into the land of their enemies, and then shall their uncircumcised heart be humbled, and then shall they expiate their guilt. So I translate this a little bit differently. So as I said, this is since we already have this described as having been done, they're already in the lands of their enemies. I think this is kind of a restatement of the fact that he'd already done this, and then while they're in the lands of their enemies, then finally they're gonna get the picture. It's gonna get through their thick heads, their thick skulls, and they're going to admit their sin. Right. So I would translate this as Afani alech imam bakeri. Then I will go against them deliberately. And no, sweetie. And having brought them into the land of their enemies, finally, or now, their uncircumcised hearts, and we can get the idea of this imagery of the uncircumcised heart, which is used a bunch of times in the Tanakh. Then their uncircumcised hearts will finally give in, will finally surrender, will finally give in. And then they will have lived out their sin, or have fulfilled the punishment necessary to be brought upon them for their sins. And now we have, as is always, as very often the case in the Tanakh in general, so after punishment, we have restoration. And that's these final verses here are now the restoration. And that is the history of Israel, right? Is it not? There was a covenant. The covenant was broken. Yahweh increased the punishment over many, many hundreds of years. Finally, he had enough. He sent Israel out into exile. They sat in exile for close to 2,000 years. They pined away. They melted away in their exile. Finally, they had enough. They realized something was wrong. Right? The Zionist movement, again, the religious will deride Theodor Herzl because he was not rabbinical, but man, that guy was a visionary. And he realized that the future was to bring the Jews back to the land of Israel. He got the picture. He understood. And so, and we have restoration. That's the process we're going through right now as a nation of Israel. That's why I'm sitting here in Israel and not in Belarus, where my grandfather was born, or not in Lodz, Poland, where my other grandfather was born. And not in New York, where I was born, but here in the land of Israel, in the Golan Heights. And I will remember my covenant with Jacob, Avraham, and also my covenant with Yitzchak, and also my covenant with Avraham. Right, so we're unwinding backwards. It's like we're going back to the source. It's kind of a chiasm. We spoke about a chiasm before, like a mirroring, right? So we see really, it's kind of a very deep point that Israel's history is a mirror. All nations have there was a famous book, and I can't remember the name of it offhand, but it spoke about how all nations follow a certain arc, right? They rise to power, they reach their height, they become decadent and corrupt, and then they fall and disappear off the face of the earth into the trash bin of history, right? So I'm sorry to say, but I think the United States of America is on that is on that downhill slope right now, right? When did it reach its peak? I don't know, World War II, thereabouts, and now close to 100 years later, it is quickly hurtling towards the trash bin of history. I mean, it couldn't even win against Iran. It was an embarrassment, right? So, but Israel follows the opposite pattern. It reaches, or it starts with a lot of promise, right? Entering into the land, Joshua, and stays, well, it has its ups and downs, but it essentially stays a nation. But it starts going downhill, say after David and Solomon. This continues until eventually it's thrown out into exile, Babylonian exile, and the exile just gets worse and worse and worse. But then at the end, it goes back up. So if the other nations go up, reach a peak, and then come back down, Israel's just the opposite. It kind of starts at the top, goes down, down, down into exile, but then at the end comes back up. And this final restoration, the restoration of Israel to its former glory, beyond its former glory, the return of Israel to Yahweh and Yahweh to Israel, right? So everything is kind of a mirror, and that brings the rest of the world back towards restoration, towards reconciliation with Yahweh, ultimately leading to a state where all of humanity, or whoever survives it, whoever's found deemed worthy, returns to a kind of Garden of Eden-like state. That's what our future holds to all those who are loyal to Yahweh in this covenant. Right? So it's a mirror effect, and Israel mirrors that mirror effect. So humanity, right? Humanity starts on high in the Garden of Eden, sinks, gets thrown out of the Garden of Eden, sinks lower and lower and lower. Eventually, Israel comes into the picture. Okay, Israel eventually sinks very low. So the low point is maybe in the depth of the exile, the dark ages, maybe, right? And then things start to, right? There's kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, a very dim, distant light, a little sparkling at the end of the tunnel, but that grows and grows and grows. We have the Renaissance, we have the Jewish emancipation, the Enlightenment, the Zionist movement, the return to Israel, and the death of rabbinical Judaism. Slow but sure death of rabbinical Judaism, or maybe not so slow. And eventually, Israel back in its land, reconciliation between Yahweh and his people Israel, the final blow to rabbinical Judaism, the final death of rabbinical Judaism, its disappearance off the face of the earth, and then the prophecies that we saw in Zechariah, with Yahweh's name one, he being king over all the earth, he being one and his name one, restoration of Israel with Yahweh and Yahweh with Israel, all of humanity being restored to Yahweh, all of humanity realizing that Yahweh is the one and only God, the one and only king over the earth, the universe, and then a return to a Garden of Eden, a Gan Eden state. So Israel mirrors that, whereas all of the rest of the nations, they have their moment in the sun, and then they just burn out and disappear off the face of the earth. But I'll remember covenant with Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham, and I will remember the land of Israel, right? It's been lying desolate. And it was indeed quite desolate for all of the time that Israel was in exile. There was not much going on here. If I'm not mistaken, the population of Jerusalem, if we go back 200 years, was around 10,000. Now it's around metropolitan areas around 1 million. The land was pretty much desolate. Va'aretz eskor, and I will remember the land. Va'aretz te'azev mehem, u'tiretz et shabtoteha. So the land which had been deprived of them, u'tiretz et shabtoteha, and which had, and this is all, I'm saying this in the pluperfect, in the past perfect. So this is not talking about it will happen or it happened. It's talking about after the fact that it happened and now the restoration. So the land which had been deprived of them, which had been abandoned of them, meaning the people of Israel, Tiretz et Shabtoteha, and which had now fulfilled, or now had enjoyed its Sabbaths, Shama mehem, while it was desolate of them, of the people of Israel, Hem yirtzu et awonam, and while they had fulfilled the punishment, they had finished, they had fulfilled the sentence, they had completed their prison sentence, so to speak, their sentence of for their sins. Ya'an b'mishpatai ma'asu, because they had most certainly despised my judgments, and they had become reviled of my laws, my statutes. You see here that mishpatim and chukim, these are not technical terms, these are poetic terms. I've mentioned this in, I debated Rabbi Asher Meza, I mentioned this. This is not meant to be rabbinical Jews and their lack of understanding, their horrible, severe lack of understanding of biblical Hebrew take this as mishpatim. They mean mishpatim, which means judgments. They think of this as a very technical term. And chukotai, statutes, my statutes, they think of a very technical term, but it's not meant to be that way at all. These are synonyms of each other, and these are in poetic parallelism with each other, and they're meant to be poetic, right? It's like saying my I don't know, in English maybe you're going to say my laws and decrees or something like that, right? There's not a technical difference between laws and decrees. It's just being poetic. It's repeating the same idea with slightly different wording. That's synonymous parallelism, it's called. Let's see if we have any commentary here. So we're in verse 43. That's a good point, but I'm not going to go to it right now. Guilt, one means iniquity or crime. Circumcised hearts. This is a recurrent metaphor for obtuseness or callousness. See the comment on Deuteronomy 10:16. So he mentions uncircumcised heart is used. It's an analogy, or it's a metaphor. Analogy. It's a metaphor that's used many times throughout the Tanakh. My covenant, the envelope structure, formed by the reiteration of this key term at the beginning and at the end of the entire section, is meant as a reassurance. God will respond in terrible wrath to Israel's dereliction, but the commitment to the covenant he expressed at the beginning will in the end lead him to rescue Israel from exiles. He once rescued them from Egyptian slavery. And that brings us up to 44, so that's where we are. So right, I'll just point out something. That at the very beginning, let me see it, find it here. One second. One second. One more second. If I can't find it, I'll just skip the point I wanted to make. One second. I can't find it. Okay, doesn't matter. I was going to make a certain point, but it doesn't matter. We'll skip that point. So we're in verse 40. We're up to verse 44. How many verses are? We're almost done. We're going to finish the chapter. ואף גם זאת בהיותם בארץ אויביהם לא מאסתים. And even though it is the case that they were in the land of their enemies, לא מאסתים, I did לא מאסתים ולא גאלתים לכלותם להפר בריתי איתם. I did not get so sick of them and so disgusted with them that I completely finished them off and completely voided my covenant with them. Ki ani Yahweh Elohehem, because at the end of the day, I am Yahweh their God, right? So this is beautiful language of restoration, of reconciliation and restoration. That's the way the Tanakh often works, right? There's harsh punishments, but a lot of the harsh prophecies in the Tanakh end with hope and reconciliation, and that's exactly what we see here. It's beautiful, really. It's like brings chills down the spine. And I will remember for them. I will remember the earlier covenants that I made with them. When I took them out of the land of Egypt, or in my taking them out of the land of Egypt. Right in the face, right in front, in the eyes, right in front of the eyes of the nations. To be for them as a God. I am Yahweh, right? So Yahweh is almost getting like sentimental here, right? It's beautiful. It's just beautiful language. I don't know how to get the point across any more than that. It's right. It's almost like Yahweh. You can figuratively see his eyes tearing up when he remembers. He's so happy that finally he's able to reconcile with Israel. He had no choice but to punish them because they were being a bunch of jerks, a bunch of a-holes. But in the end, they're going to finally get the message, whoever's left of them, but collectively speaking, the nation will get the message. He's not going to totally finish them off. Because at the end of the day, he is Yahweh, their God, and he loves them. He loves their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He loves Israel. And it seems like he's, how can I put this? He had to get, medieval on their butts because they were being such jerks, but he seems, the language here is just one of happiness and relief, and you just see the yearning of Yahweh towards his people. Finally, he can get back together with his beloved people, Israel. Finally, they've gotten the clue. They've gotten the idea. They've gotten the lesson. And it's this imagery of reconciliation, permanent reconciliation. That they've learned the lesson so much, it's not going to happen again. We've learned from the pogroms, from the Inquisitions, the exiles. When I lived in Portugal, I lived about about an hour and a half from an Inquisition, a place where there was an Inquisition court running until the 1800s. Now the Jews were already long gone from Portugal for the most part. No, they weren't long gone. They had either emigrated or were living as crypto Jews. If you're ever in Portugal, you can visit a former crypto Jewish community in the central north of the country, Belmonte. But where I lived, which was in the middle of nowhere when I was in Portugal for 4 years, was about an hour and 15 minutes away from a city named Évora, Evora, where there was an Inquisition court running until the 1800s in Évora. I don't know how many Jews they got, but there were a lot of crypto Jews. There were a lot of people who were living secretly as Jews, and they might have been tried even up until the 1800s. I don't remember. I'd have to look up the history again. At any rate, אלא חוקים המשפטים והתורה אשר נתן יהוה בינו ובין בני ישראל בהר סיני ביד משה. And here we have a real summary kind of statement. These are the statutes and the judgments and the instructions, which, and again, these are not technical terms. Asher natan, these are poetic terms for using repetition to get the idea across. All of the laws, all of the instructions, Asher natan Yahweh beino ubein bnei Israel, which Yahweh had gave or made between himself and between the children of Israel, Bahar Sinai b'yad Moshe, on by Mount Sinai through the hand of Moses. And this ends what's usually referred to as the holiness code. And we see this is basically a major summary or a summation sentence that shows that it ends a major section in the Torah. And this verse or 27, which we're going to get to next time, it's kind of, I can't call it an afterthought, but it's kind of some miscellaneous laws that maybe couldn't be fit in other places. Let's get a little commentary here. The covenant of the first one's a somewhat opaque phrase, refers to the founding generation that stood at Sinai, but its very vagueness allows a certain elision between the first ones and the patriarchs with whom God initially sealed the covenant. That's just been mentioned. Between himself and the Israelites, the locution of betweenness and the summation at the end of the preceding laws and statutes, followed by this chapter's catalog of blessings and curses, an indication of the two-sided contractual nature of God's covenant with Israel that is repeatedly invoked in blessings and curses. I have to look up. So as I mentioned here at the end, where it says, right, the regulations, the decrees, laws, and regulations that Yahweh established at Mount Sinai between himself and the Israelites through Moses, I'd have to look back and see if there's a parallel or mirroring opening sentence that says, these are the decrees, laws, and regulations that Yahweh established at Mount Sinai. And that would kind of close that whole section out. But I'm not going to do that right now because it's getting late. So we're going to end here. Any questions, any comments? שמציע לך לעשות אחד ישר דברי, אני אעשה את זה, pointed heart, אני בהזדמנות, אני אעשה גם שיעורים בעברית, אוקיי? אחרת יהיה קשה להתמודד עם הרבנות, יהדות הרבנות. טוב מאוד, אני מסכים איתך. תודה רבה על ההערה שלך. אני באמת, אני אתחיל בהזדמנות, לסדר עוד כמה דברים, אבל אני מבטיח בעתיד הקרוב שאני אתחיל לעשות גם שירים בעברית. אתה צודק ב100%. Okay, thank you very much, Melech. You're welcome, Paul. Any other questions? Any other comments before we end it for today? All right, appreciate all of you attending the study. I hope you learned a lot from it. I certainly did. Every time I teach, I learn. It's one of the best things about teaching. It's one of the greatest things about being a teacher is you also learn. So I appreciate all of you for coming. I won't give the usual, stuff that I usually say. I'm sick and tired of it. I hate, I honestly hate asking people to donate and all this kind of stuff. But really, if you want to support the movement, then you know what to do. So, but I appreciate all of you coming, and I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov wherever you happen to be on planet Earth. Hope you will all be in Israel at one point, if not to live, then at least to visit. And I wish you guys a wonderful Shabbat and a wonderful week. Shabbat Shalom and a Shavua Tov. B'ezrat Yahweh, with the help of Yahweh. We'll see you guys again next week. So thanks very much for attending. This has been Hakham Melech Rahmiel ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And we'll see you again soon. Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov. We'll go out with music as always.
着一个渴望，我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳。山，我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷。犹太心灵深处，拥抱着一个渴望，我们的眼睛朝向东方，远远地眺望夕阳山。我们不会失去2000年的希望，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷，在自己国土做个自由民族，住在西安的耶路撒冷。我们不会失去2000年的希